Hey guys, this is the last episode of 2019, and we had a great year, lots of great guests, lots of fun recording with Dave and I, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We also recently asked everyone to fill out a survey, and about 800 of you did. We really appreciate that. We sent out some notices for all the people that won the drawing, and we'll be getting addresses and sending that stuff out soon. If you still want to help us out, you can always send a review on iTunes. That really helps us kind of stay up in the rankings. And you can always let your friends know about episodes, especially episodes like this one. Now, this is episode 241. This is a repeat of a past episode, but it is unfortunately because Chuck Peddle, the person we're interviewing here, has passed away. Chuck is the inventor of the 6502. It was the chip that started it all. It was in early Apple, early computing stuff. And so this is a great episode to kind of learn about early history and what it took to get that chip made. We love this episode. It was so much fun recording with him. It is a 3-hour episode, so I will warn you about that, but we thought it was good enough to actually re-air it here. And hopefully you enjoy it, you share with others, you let people know what a giant Chuck was in the electronics industry and how much he did for us. So rest in peace, Chuck. We really appreciated you being on the show, and hope you enjoy this. This is episode 241 of the Amp Hour, re-aired for you. We'll see you in 2020. This is the Amp Hour podcast, recorded March 18th, 2015. Episode 241, with guest Chuck Peddle, charismatic, chip-making, Corypheus.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm supposed to introduce myself now?
That's it.
Okay. My name is Chuck Peddle, born Charles, but nobody ever calls me that because I don't like it. And so if you look me up on the internet, my stage name is Chuck Peddle.
You should see a tap dance.
What? And we specifically started this. I'm going to hopefully start this conversation with the beginning of the microprocessor industry, and so we can see how that evolved into the personal computer industry and to kind of where we are today. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to a lot of people as we go along.
That's awesome.
Most of whom everybody's ignored, but I try to do that.
That's what we want to hear, the stories.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, not just stories. That you do things like this with small teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Big teams are not very effective, and so you have small teams. And what happens is you get a guy like me that's out doing some of the marketing and everything else, so I get all the credit. And yet there's guys who never got any credit, but who in fact created a lot of the pieces of stuff. So I make a point of trying to explain why they should get the credit and how we did certain things. Okay?
Gotcha. Got it. Well, we should say as well that what Chuck is kind of dancing around here is that one of the products that he's very intimately involved in was the 6502, which enabled things like the Apple II and the PET, which is the Commodore PET, and a Nintendo, the original Nintendo, and a wide range of other things. And that is why we've asked him here.
A bunch of them. We could say, I think it's fair to say, Chuck, you are one of, if not the father of the personal computer. Is that too embarrassing to say?
No, not at all. I claim that title, even though Steve Wozniak keeps going to go around and steal it.
Awesome, we can get into that.
And I can tell you the stories about Wozniak and why he shouldn't claim it.
Yes. Right.
I'll give you 1 minute history and then we'll talk about each piece.
Okay.
We did the 6502 because, and I'll explain why we did that. Okay. While we're in the process of introducing the 6502, we got into the video game business with Atari, right? And that became an enormous business for everybody.
Yep.
And during that period, there were a bunch of people that were making what were called board computers. Actually, were for technicians to build their own. And there was an Apple II, and there was but a more important was Dr. Sedling, which created that market. And we had a whole bunch of programmers that came to us and said, we don't want to build our own computer, but we really want a computer. And we kept listening, and finally we decided, okay, we'll go build a computer. And we called that product the Commodore PET. And I'll show you why it was the predecessor for everything else. And then we got the pad into production, and then we built a second product called the VIC-20 and the C64, and we'll explain how those evolved. And during that period of time, we explored how we would do the next generation thing, because none of those computers were strong enough to be what ultimately became the personal computer.
Right.
And so
and that gets on to the Victor, correct?
Yeah, so we did the first MS-DOS machine outside of IBM, and we'll explain that for a minute as we go by. And we won Computer of the Year over the PC that year, and we outsold the PC for 2 years. So we really started the PC business also, and then we. Okay.
Right. I always forget about that the PC was actually, that was like an IBM term, but then that got co-opted broadly, right?
Well, what happened was a bunch of guys in Ben Rosen and encouraged some Texans that kept telling everybody you have to be exactly compatible with the PC. And the reason is because Ben had just gone out and started a funny little company called Compaq.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys at Compaq wanted to build a TI type machine because they were all out of TI. And Rosen said, okay, we'll give you the money and we'll support you, but only if you make it exactly like the PC. Mm-hmm. And because he did that, then these guys could go out and say, well, you have to have a machine exactly like the PC. And so we went from a product that actually failed, the original PC, to the product that everybody thinks was created by IBM and the whole world did. But in fact, there was so much creativity going on there at the time that were derived from the fact they were trying to make something like the PC or basic MS-DOS machines. So ultimately, we got down to calling them PCs, and I'll tell you briefly as we go along with the history. We broke the chain where everything had to look like the old ugly PC, right?
Got it.
And that actually lasted for about 5 years, right, till we broke it.
Terrific.
Yeah. Anyhow,
so let's start
we believe our team, my team, won Computer of the Year 4 times.
Ooh.
Nobody's ever run more than once.
Fantastic.
So we're very proud of the fact that we think we created that business. Okay.
Awesome. Well, let's start in 1973, shall we? This is after you left General Electric and you moved to Motorola, correct?
Yeah, basically, it was kind of a funny deal because while we're at GE, we came up with the idea of a concept called distributed intelligence. And it was because I had been briefed on what was happening at Fairchild. So I knew the IC industry was about ready to take off. Right. And communications had started to happen, right? I mean, this is 1970. Communications had started to happen. And there was no internet or anything, but we at least could talk to things over telephone lines, right? And we actually worked on a product that was a very, very centralized server-based, sitting in the office kind of cash register that was written for.
I was going to say, you
someone.
Basically invented the cash register.
Yeah, the first one these guys did, right, was a very online system. It was called Tradar, and we took a look at it. We actually were involved in the same group, and we having to do some work on it. But we took a look at it, and we said, "This is wrong. This is not the right way to do it." So a small team and I came down, and we said, "Okay, what happens if we put intelligence into the devices?" Now, today, you guys only use intelligent devices. You got a smartphone in your pocket. Okay.
Yeah. Little spoiled.
Whippersnappers, yeah.
No, but my point is that, you don't even think about it not being distributed intelligence, right? But remember, that's at a time where people were still just barely moving away from phones that you didn't need an operator to plug in, right? So they built this computer. I just love to tell the story because it's funny.
Please do.
These guys built this machine that, in order to, when you typed on a key in a retail establishment, you went over the phone line, went to this little central device, and then the central device went back and told it print on the screen. that character. Right?
Just a single key. So just a single key hit.
Yeah. So anything that went on always went back to the central device and back, and that was that was centralized intelligence. That's where time sharing was. That's where people were moving from punch cards and fooling around with machines to the concept that you could go online and do things, right? And so, but all of the things you did something with, you had a little more than dumb a terminal, and you talked to a thing that did something. In time sharing, you were on a teletype and you went to a computer, and all the computing was done on the time sharing system, right? And that's where the technology was in 1970, right? And we took a look at it and says, "This is crazy. It's not going to work," right? And it turns out that I predicted it. We had come up with this alternate design for cash registers, credit verification, and everything else, where you put the intelligence in the terminal. Okay,
got it.
That's distributed intelligence.
But that wasn't a microprocessor at the time because they weren't invented.
No, it wasn't a microprocessor yet. We just said we're going to put the intelligence there, right?
Right, so it was the concept.
It was a concept, right? A very important concept. But so anyhow, these guys hooked up. I don't know if you live in Cleveland, so you know. I don't know what they do in Australia. You practice Boxing Day in Australia, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, in America, the day after Thanksgiving is known as Black Friday.
Yeah.
Right? And it's because everybody runs down to the store and buys all the stuff that they didn't want to buy, but they're going to buy for Christmas.
That's right.
Okay.
Because it's half price.
Okay. So they've got this online system hooked up in this store in Anaheim, California, and it's running to a server that's in the same general vicinity. And they're now running cash register, and it did a legitimate job. It would print on the thing, and it had a little scanner, and it would scan credit cards, and it was a really well done system from a conceptual standpoint. And the communication line between the two went down. Okay,
on a huge retail day.
Think of being in a store where you cannot sell anything on that day.
they couldn't even accept cash, No,
it was there was a small rebellion against the product at that point. I suspect that if some of those people who were in that store could have gotten their hands on the engineers, they would have been dismembered, right? I mean, it was just terrible, right? And it kind of proved what we've been saying all along. You don't want centralized intelligence. It's not useful, right? It's expensive and it's not the right thing. So we got an opportunity to talk to Exxon, and they told us how they wanted an automated cash register and why, right? I love the opening the guy did. He said, we are the most important industry in the world, right? And as you know, there's been wars fought over companies. You have to argue that he's not been very wrong, okay? And he says, we're represented to our client by a pimply-faced teenager that doesn't know which end is up, right? We want to stop all that, right? We want to go to self-service gas stations, which of course they did. And we want to have it all automated by something that's in the pump, right?
Right.
And local. Yeah. And we talked to the guys at Visa who were starting the Visa credit card, and they said we need.
It was that early, was it?
Oh yeah. Just 1970 was 70 was a really important time because we were swapping from the distributed intelligence thing or centralized intelligence thing was strong enough that you could start Visa, right?
Right.
And you could go online and get right. I mean, it didn't work long. It wouldn't have worked long term, but it did, right? We just slightly progressed from plugging in the phone lines to having some level of automation of the phone. Okay. No, and we actually had done things like magnetic ink checks, right? And you could scan a credit card and read it. You know, those kinds of things were happening, right? But we got a chance to see this entire market and see that if we did some distributed intelligence machines, we would have an enormous company. So we went out and started a company called Intelligent Terminal Systems. and we built a demo. And just to put it in perspective, the only DRAM I had in that device was 8K shift registers. Okay, because there were no RAM devices around.
But 8K was a lot.
Yeah, it was a special product from Nationals they'd invented, and you put one each in. And my technician the other day, was one of my investors in my new company, was reminding himself that they came in a can that got hot, right? Because it was anyhow. The point
takes about
was
4 amps, right?
Right. Yeah. So the point is that we did this little terminal and proved that the concepts were going to work. But we couldn't get venture capital funding. It was at a time when getting venture capital funding in Phoenix was impossible.
Right.
So we kind of had to give up on it. And at that point, I had gone off and worked for a guy doing the first online typesetting system we did with distributed intelligent typesetting using the PDP-11. And we were actually setting type for the local newspaper and stuff like that. So we were able to get that level of peripheral working, and it was very helpful for me because I got to really understand the way the PDP-11 worked. And so at what happened, I'm going to give you some more history here just so we can put it in perspective. There was during this time, people were starting to go away from teletypes and looking to have something that was on their desk that looked like a CRT that they could type on. It was really acting like a teletype, but it was a lot more elegant, right? And they actually were smart enough that they type a key and put the key on the screen. But anyhow, but the point is that these were called CRTs, and they were very important and starting to happen. And a company in Boston announced that they could build this really cheap, I think it was like $300 as opposed to $1,000 CRT. And the whole world fell in love and said, that's going to be the hottest company in the world. And so they did two things. They went to all the semiconductor guys and said, we can't do this without you doing a high level of integration. You got to make us a custom chip for this and a custom chip for that. So people like Motorola said, well, that's such a great idea. We'll invest in it, right? So Motorola created a new process and a new chip to do that. And so did everybody else. And about a year later, it came out that this whole thing was nothing but a big stock scam and they couldn't build it. Right? So here's these semiconductor companies with these teams pulled together that have just finished these chips that nobody's going to buy, and they got a new process in place. And the guy who was in Phoenix that was in charge of that was named Tom Bennett, and he had come out of the calculator business, right? So he had a pretty good idea about what a calculator ought to do. And he said to himself, I can do what we wanted to do in the Viatron if I make it into a thing called a microprocessor. And so he was one of the real pioneers in the microprocessor. Intel gets credit. They did a product called the 4040, which was nothing but a calculator, just a calculator.
Oh, the 400, is it 4004?
Yeah, I think it is, something like that, whatever it is.
The 4004 and then the 8008.
It was just and then the 8008 was actually done for a team of people I knew very well who got it as a custom chip, and what they were doing is they were walking around stores typing in to a small terminal they built around the 8008, and they were doing stock keeping in grocery stores and everything every night. And they were the predecessors to what they do today. But, now they finally moved it back to the cash register. But at that time, we didn't have them at the cash register. So they would go around, and they actually created the 8008 as a custom for those guys, right?
But you don't think the 8008 was the first micro, do you?
No, not at all, because it wasn't.
Explain
it was designed
why.
for this one application.
Right.
No, they started working on the 8080 at the same time Bennett started working on the 6800.
He moved to Motorola, didn't he? So
Bennett was at Motorola.
He was already at Motorola.
He was at Motorola leading the Viatron team.
Right.
That's the reason I took it.
And then they couldn't sell them. Yeah, they couldn't sell them, so they went, what can we do with it?
All of a sudden, I've got this new process. I've got all this new capability. And Bennett's thought is I could make a microprocessor. Now, I'm not sure what a microprocessor is. I know it's sort of like a calculator, and here's some of the things that you have to do different than they do with a calculator, because he knew calculators pretty well. And Motorola was in the same general vicinity as a company called General Electric, which I worked for up until then, who had gone out of the business. And a bunch of those guys had wound up in Motorola, and they wanted to build a mini computer, right?
All right.
This DEC was really hot during that time, right? And the
So
other
Motorola, who were a chip maker, wanted to get into the mainframe computer business.
The marketing guys wanted to make the
huge margins.
Right. They wanted to make a mini computer, and Bennett wanted to make a better calculator, right? And so they actually fought most of the time about it. But anyhow, so Bennett, somehow or other, he got my resume on his desk, and he called me in and he said, "Listen, I know that you want to make your company work, and you can't make it work now because you don't have the equipment. If you'll come to work with me and make the things that we need to do work, you can then spin back out and use them in your company." Well, given that I didn't have any income, that was a great deal, right?
Yeah, right.
So
I don't know. Oh, you're twisting my arm. I'll take it.
It was a good pitch. He was a great guy. I mean, I really appreciated what he did. So anyhow, and he hired this one young engineer out of the other Tucson University, and he was doing things like looking at the process to try to make it better, and he assigned him to me, and I looked at some of the instructions in the 6800. We made some changes. Like, for instance, I added non-maskable interrupt, which nobody gets credit for, but it's a very key thing if you're going to do things with pieces of hardware like that. And we changed the addressing some, but we couldn't make any major changes because it was pretty far down the road in terms of being done. And secondly, I had these marketing guys that thought they were building a mini computer. But
the 6800 was mostly developed before you got there, is that right?
It was partially developed, and I contributed. But what was important was a microprocessor without an I/O device is just a current hog, right?
Right.
Hook it up, plug it in, and it just sits there and eats things and doesn't do anything because it can't.
And you can't even flash a LED, right?
Right. So what we did is we said, look, what we need is a universal I/O device, right? And we invented it, right? It had programmable I/O on multiple pins. You could go input, output. You could mix them together. We put edge detection in, and the product was called the PIA. And you
invented the PIA. Thank you very much.
Myself and Bill Minch did the PIA because Bill was the process guy, and I would say, "This is what I want," and he would go away and say, "Well, I'm not sure we have a circuit that can do that." And so he'd go away and create an edge detecting circuit, right? Because you needed all the things we put in there, right?
Real quick, how is this? I'm going to get to play the dumb guy again. What was the option before? Did it have to go over a memory bus? Otherwise, if it didn't
anywhere. They didn't do it. Nobody knew what they were going to do with them. They were just building these things. They didn't have any idea.
With no I/O on them, yeah.
No, nobody had any idea why they were building it. They were building it because they wanted to make a mini computer. Now, DEC understood I/O, right? I mean, the PDP-11 had great I/O, memory managed I/O, right? And so, but these guys didn't have a clue, right? So we took that job on and we built it, and it worked and it was wonderful. Okay, now I have a PIA, and we got the 6800 working. And so then the next thing that happened inside of Motorola is they said, well, nobody knows what this is or how to sell it. So I did a class on the inside of Motorola explaining this is what it is and here's how you sell it. Because with these two things, you can do distributed intelligent machines, right? That's all you need because you got RAM, ROM already, right? And that's enough. You can make it. And they said, so this class got to be a little famous inside the company. And one good thing that came out of that class, in addition, there was a guy by the name of Roger Camp from the University of Iowa who fed me all of my great programming and engineers after that from Iowa. But anyhow, so because of that, the guys in the field said, well, we got to go out and conduct. Our customers are asking us. We've heard we got a microprocessor. They don't know what they can do with it, and they don't want. So what they want to do is bring somebody in from the factory, and they'll bring all their engineers together, and you sit down and explain to them what a microprocessor is and how to use it. So I got to visit Hewlett-Packard, Tektronix, Bailey Instruments, NCR, Ford Motor Company. I got to all these places, and every time when I was there, I would have this classroom full of people who desperately wanted to believe this, right? I mean, there were the hot engineers in the company, and they really wanted to do something. They had read about it. They wanted to do something. So I would sit down and explain to them how you use the PIA and how you put the processor together. And then we'd get all done, and they say, that's a great idea. And the PIA were selling for $5 or something. Rather. They were selling the 6800 for $250.
Well, and they went, that's too expensive.
The guy said, I can't
we can't build that into a product.
I can't do that, right? They said to me. Yeah. And so I would get all these really smart, this room were really smart people. And I would say, okay, the reason that chips cost more money is because you put too many things in them. So what I want to do is to define the absolute minimum thing you need to make the microprocessor go with this nice little PIA. Because PIA was small and fast and cheap. And they would almost always agree on a small instruction set. Okay.
Right. All right. And the reason it was expensive is when you put more features in is because of the yield, right? The yield. Oh,
not just that. It's harder. It makes a chip much bigger and much more complicated. Yeah, no, it screws up yield totally, right? And so everybody. So I had like 10 of the top engineering groups in the country, all of whom agreed with me. Okay, right? Right. And then it actually helped me do this. And Motorola found out about it, so they wrote me a letter. And the guys who wanted to make the mini computer said, you're screwing up our mini computer program. So they went to the top management and got a letter from top management that says you have to abandon your work on that product and never mention it again.
This is the low cost product you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you were doing the marketing, you were pushing basically figuring out what was out there, and you were building this thing, and you were basically defining
what I wanted to have. I was going to build the next generation, right? Because that's what I knew we needed, and they knew what he needed, and all that, right?
Right.
And which is going to be what, 1/10 the cost?
Yes, it was.
Was that
significantly?
That was about the target.
Right? Yeah, and so Motorola wrote me this letter saying you have to stop working on it. So I wrote them back a letter that says the laws of patents said you just abandon the product, and all of the work I've done on it belongs to me now, and I'm going to go off and do it myself. Right?
Wow.
Oh, and they agreed to that?
No, but they later had to because it was true. Right? Okay.
Oh, okay.
It was true. And so I put together a small team, and I went and sold the concept of doing this to the guy who I had worked for at Motorola. I mean, at GE. He was the guy that did the original magnetic ink card reader system for Bank of America. Right?
Wow.
Very smart guy. Right? Yeah. He'd gone off and started a semiconductor company in upstate New York, and he had built the best calculator chips. That's what they were doing, the biggest, best, because he'd invented 2 or 3 major new process steps that gave him much higher yield. So here's a guy that knows...
We're talking about MOS tech. We're talking about MOS.
We're talking about MOS technology, right?
Yes. Okay. MOS, yes. It's not MOS because that's not what you guys called it, is it?
No, call it MOS technology because there was a MOS tech in Texas who I actually talked to, LJ7, who later on often was one of the founders of Compaq. He turned it down because he was afraid I was going to get sued by Motorola, which I wasn't. And so he said, no, I don't want to fight those guys. So, and Pavin didn't care because he had a calculator company and he didn't have any major reason for them to beat him up. Although they tried later. But here I was just lucky because here's a guy that absolutely understood what I wanted about a low-cost microprocessor because he was a computer guy, right? In a major technology. And he was a great technologist. So he said, what I'll do is I'll build you the first 5-volt in-channel process and I'll give you the money and you put your team together and we'll build this chip. Right.
So you left Motorola.
I took this team out of Motorola. We moved into MOS technology. 6 months later, we had the chip done and the process done.
This is the 6500.
6502. Series. Right. Yep.
6501 at first, wasn't it?
Well, no. The 6501 was a game. Okay. I was designing the 6502. Because we had come out of Motorola, we said we'll make a version of it that looks like the 6800 just for fun, just to see if people are interested. And some people actually bought it, but we were never serious about it, right? It was
and that's what Motorola sued you for, because it was pin compatible.
Well, no, they sued us because they wanted to stop us.
Right.
No. To tell you the story about Motorola's suit is very simple. I'll take you through the rest of the history on the 6502 because it was really kind of fun.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so we got the 6502. We invented another one called the VIA, which was a better version of the PIA. And we built a ROM-RAM chip, I/O chip, that went with it to make a low-cost device, right? You put ROM, RAM, and I/O on this one device, and then you put the 6502 and you put it in a small package, right? So it was very, all those packages back at that time were costing $5 a package because they're in ceramic, and you could put the 6502 in a small plastic package with less pins and less addressing space and so forth, but it didn't matter because you didn't need it, right? So we decided that we wanted to get everybody's attention, and so what we said was, you can go to this show in San Francisco, and we will sell you one microprocessor for $25.
$25. That was unheard of.
Compared to the 200 everybody else was getting, right?
Yeah.
And
200 versus.
This is what revolutionized the computer, the personal computer industry.
We knew that. We knew we could build it a lot cheaper than that, and I'll explain that story in a minute. But anyhow, so what we said is we put into all the electronics magazines, advertise, see us at this show in San Francisco, and we'll sell you a microprocessor because we wanted to prove to you that you can have one for $25. We're going to give it to you, along with the programs and how to use it. Right, development.
And weren't there a lot of people who thought it was a joke?
No, but it wasn't a joke. What happened was the day before, about 2 days before the show, people at the show realized what we had advertised, right? And they said to you, we'll have to close down your booth. And I said, why? And they said, because you can't sell anything on the floor. So I said, I'll tell you what. We went up to the St. Francis Hotel. We took over a great big suite. And we had done a development system for it. We had an online system. We had 3 local cards. We had done a whole bunch of support things. And so we took the suite over and we showed everything in the suite. And then we sold the computers out of the suite. So people would come to the booth and say, we want to buy this. Yep. And they would say, no, you got to go over to the MacArthur suite and buy it. And people would get on the bus and say, is this the bus that goes to the MacArthur suite? And so we had hundreds of people come through. My wife was sitting up on the stage with a great big tall glass jar full of microprocessors and the books beside it. And so she'd sell you the 2 books and the microprocessor. And if you went around the room, we could order or some of the development stations and everything. And, this, because we showed this big jar, everybody believed we had lots of them, and we did. But only about half of them worked. The bottom half were the rejects.
The bottom half were duds.
Right.
I think when Bill was on the show, he mentioned that story as well. That's insane.
Yeah.
I just love it. It's all about image. Yep.
Well, no.
Yep, exactly.
If everybody that walks up gets one, right? Mm-hmm. And then they believe that we have enough, and we really did have enough. It just we didn't have enough yet for the show. We actually had to make it.
Now apparently the Woz turned up and bought one, didn't he?
No.
Was it at this show that the Woz bought one, or was it a different show?
Actually, Steve.
Oh, it was Steve, wasn't
Steve
it? I thought it was the Woz that bought one.
No. Steve came up with the idea. He went to the show, and he listened to what was going on, and he looked at some of the guys like Suiting and these other guys had done it. And Steve is the idea that came up with the idea of building their own kit computer. Okay, Woz did it, but it was Steve's idea originally. And I'll give you a side story because it's really true. Steve, everybody talks about they sold a car or something or other in order to build a thing. What actually happened is Steve made a contract with Atari because he knew those guys real well, that they would develop a game and Woz developed.
That was Breakout, wasn't it?
It's the
Breakout,
first.
That's right.
I give Woz credit every time I speak to anybody. It was the first non-violent computer game.
Oh, really?
Think about it. Everybody else is
that, like
Pong,
asteroids
knocking to asteroids, tank, right? It was a legitimate, and the money from that, which Woz couldn't officially take, and Steve did it for him instead, allowed them to go out and start the company.
Right.
Anyhow, okay. Just to kind of bury the who started the personal computer industry.
Yes, please.
We had
I'm waiting for it.
We had a development system, which is a big ugly thing that we carry around. It was an ICE system. Does the word ICE mean anything to you? In circuit emulation.
In circuit emulator. This is not the Kim 1, right? This is before the Kim 1.
The Kim 1 was there. We offered the Kim 1 for people who wanted to do it.
Oh, you were offering the Kim 1 in 75 at the show,
were you? Right, the original show.
Right. Okay.
And we had 2 other development systems done by other people that were there too. And then we had the
which by the way, folks, Chuck also with the Kim 1 invented the world's first single board computer.
Yeah, sort of, maybe. Well, I don't know. It's an argument. I don't care. We don't care. Forget it. We don't want to take credit for that.
Monitor.
There were a whole lot of guys.
Right.
Remember, it had a little calculator keyboard on it. The guys that did it inside of MOS Technology were calculator guys, right? And so they made a little calculator board, and it was a nice little product, right? And so we had this development system, which I was carrying around the Bay Area and plugging into people's stuff and make it work, right? And then I used to have a bet with people. I could go into a company and over a weekend I could design a new product for them using the 6502. And I did that with calculators and printers and a whole bunch of different products, right? And a guy, although we took it up on a pinball machine, and I didn't do it in a weekend, but we did a pinball machine, okay, with lots of PIAs, a lot of PIAs in it. Anyhow, so my local sales guy had met Jobs and Wozniak because they were listed as somebody that bought the product, and he went by and checked on them, and it didn't work. The Apple One didn't work. And so they asked me to bring in the development system, which I did, and we actually helped him work. Now, Woz has a story in some book he's written, or somebody wrote a book that says I showed up with a hat, which I didn't, and I was wearing a suit, which I wasn't, and we were not there to sell them anything. We were there to help them, like we were helping everybody else, make their computer work, right?
And this was in the Jobs' garage? In Jobs'
garage, yes. Okay, so we did that, right? We got it working and we went on. And the next time we crossed paths was, I told you, we went around the country introducing the 6502 and telling people what a great idea it was and everything. And the kit computers were starting to take off reasonably well, right? I don't think Apple sold more than 100 of theirs, but certainly sold a lot, right? And so the programmer, and I'm going to finish telling you a story about that because it's a really important story. The shooting kind of machine was designed for the same people that used to buy from Heathkit, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Heathkit was the guys until Radio Shack kind of buried them, right? But Heathkit was the sort of thing you built your own audio amplifier, right?
Absolutely, they were the
kit business.
They were the kit business,
And so the concept of the kit computer was the same thing. They shipped you all the stuff in a box, and they told you to work if you put it together and solder it and all that. And so the guys that built it were the same guys, right? So a programmer who wanted to have his own computer, and I'm going to explain to you why they all wanted their own computer in a few minutes, they came to us at the show and said, because they saw the Kim 1, but the Kim 1 wasn't that. And they said, what we want is a computer that we don't have to build. We want something we just walk in, take it, and start programming it. And,
programmers, right? Come on, guys.
Well, no, but why not, right? I mean, people who are, I'll call them users, right? I mean, okay. Now, let me explain to you that at the time we started, what we knew about a massive user potential. I worked at GE, gave the first program. The guys that I work with in GE built the first time-sharing system for Dartmouth, where the BASIC was done, right? And I gave the first class inside of GE on BASIC. And then I worked in the jet engine business, where we had guys who were given their own 225 machine with a time-sharing version of BASIC to design jet engines with. So you could do a lot with BASIC, right? A lot more than everybody thought you could, right? And so a lot of the accounting groups got versions of BASIC and put them on machines. So every kid that was coming out of school that had any accounting degree, any finance degree, marketing degree, engineering degree, every one of them were coming out of college using time sharing in the college, right? And they all had learned how to get on and write programs in BASIC, and they had their own individual programs, and then the instructors were given programs, and some of the tests were using the program. So they're very computer literate, right? Well, suddenly people started looking at their bill for GE's time-sharing service and discovered it was enormous, right? So they said to everybody, you can't have time-sharing anymore. We've got a computer downstairs. You take your cards down to it, and we'll give you back a run in a couple days. Okay, so here's people who are used to titling their own machines online, right? And you probably don't know it because I'm not sure you're old enough, but during that period of time was a major rebellion in the United States against technology by a whole bunch of people that threw themselves in front of things. Yeah, they killed the SSD, the high-speed, they killed MOL. They killed a whole bunch of projects because they were so out of. And what they did, a couple of them did, is they broke into university computers and hacked them up, literally. Right?
Lightweight
hatchets.
And so all of the computer companies put this barriers up. You could not get through a bulletproof barrier to get to the computer. You literally walked up, put your cards in a tray, because everybody was afraid that they were going to get their computers trashed. So we'd gone from, here's this wonderful thing of sitting here with my own computer, to this barrier, to these big things,
incredible.
Right? And
true
there
firewall.
wasn't a few people, right? It was every graduate and everybody who'd worked in companies like Pete Marwick and all that. All were sitting there frustrated. So those are the people who were talking to me. They're saying, I want a computer, right? So I knew, absolutely knew, that I had to have a machine that was really good at BASIC, okay?
So you added Tiny BASIC to the Kim 1?
Never. No. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. Didn't matter. When I was going to do the PET, I got in a car, drove my family across the United States to go to work for Trammell in Palo Alto. And along the way, I stopped at this in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and went to this 2-room place over a bank and met with Bill Gates and his team. And they had written a BASIC for the 6502. And I said, look, what you have is not good enough. So I'm going to go out there. We're going to get started. And if you'd send your programmer out, we'll define to you what BASIC ought to be if you're going to put it in a computer that does things, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So Gates agreed, right? And they setting out, and I had this really smart guy that had worked for me about 10 times, who would help me start. We did a first board layout program together. He and ex PhD from Czechoslovakia University, and the two of us sat down with this guy, and we blocked out what we wanted to have for I/O functions and screen functions. And I don't know if you've looked at way we can prove this. If you look at ASCII, right? Yeah. At that time, ASCII was only half as big as it is today. They only had the front side stuff defined. So we took over the second.
The first 127.
Right. We took the second and defined them with PET symbols. Okay. And if you look at them today, they're still diamonds in that set. They've been slowly taking them out over time. But what we did is we put character drawing capability in, right? We put the command.
With the borders and all the single and double borders and all that sort of
everything
stuff.
Anything you needed to build it, something you could do complete visual build on the machine using character graphics, right?
Right, and we'll put a picture to the keyboard because it's on the keyboard to the pet. Is that right?
Right. So what happened was we extended BASIC, so it would do that. We put the IEEE 488 bus on because I wanted everybody to believe you could do any I/O with it, right? And HP was in the process of trying to establish that as the proper interface to instrumentation, right? And HP had actually done some work with putting BASIC on their stuff to be able to manage the IEEE bus, but we put the other commands in. And so all the commands that are in the BASIC you buy today, most of the things that do things rather than run a teletype, were added by us in that week period, right? And so they took it back, got it working, we made it working, and then we negotiated a contract with Gates for a one-time buy. And he didn't believe in the 6502 because he was been trained at Harvard, and he knew that anything with that small a stack was not a real computer, okay? And he was right, it wasn't. Except he forgot that what he was writing was an interpreter, and the interpreter doesn't need a stack, okay? So we could use his interpretive BASIC, right, on a 6502 without ever running into a limitation because of the stack. And we did, right? So the idea was we're going to put BASIC in ROM. We're going to put all this beautiful screen stuff that we're doing in ROM. And ROMs just happened right about that time.
Right. We're talking about EEPROMs? Or are we talking about
real ROMs?
One-time programs?
Real ROMs.
Burn it and you're done.
Manly ones. Burn them once.
Real ROMs. You put them on the board.
Write your schematics.
Remember, these guys were out of the calculator business at MOS Technology, so they were using ROM-based calculators for a long time, right?
Yep.
Because you had to do all those mathematical functions. You did them. A little calculator sort of looks like a microprocessor. You program it, right? And so all of those.
Was the ROM with the lookup table on it or something
more
like
than
that?
a lookup table. I actually have algorithms for doing computations, right? All that fancy scientific stuff is programmed in ROM using the calculator functions, right? So they were used to using ROMs, and so they built us a nice big ROM, and we put the big ROM on, and we put the BASIC in the ROM, and we put the rest of the stuff in ROM. And Radio Shack had been looking at the computer stores. Now remember, computer stores happened because people were selling these kits. And a lot of people got the kit and said, I don't know what to do with this, right? So
exactly.
So you go down to your favorite computer store guy, and he'd help you get it working, right? Okay?
Yeah.
And but the problem is they started stocking things like TTL and ROMs and things like that. Well, Radio Shack had buried, I just told you, Heathkit, right?
Heathkit,
yes. They had buried everybody. There was nobody trying to compete with them in the stores for electronics business, except for the new computer stores, right?
Right.
So John Roach at Radio Shack says, I've got to have a product that kicks their ass, okay?
Yep.
And he agreed with us that it had to be a turnkey product. He wasn't going to try to teach the Radio Shack guys how to make a computer. He was going to teach them how to sell a computer, right? So he spec'd a computer, built-in CRT, built-in keyboard, built-in tape drive, right? Mm-hmm. And we were working to that spec because it was the same spec I had. And we actually showed it to John Roach the first time ever at the CES show in Chicago when it was 50 degrees below zero outside, right? And
Midwest,
yeah, that was the last time the CES show was in Chicago was that weekend, right? And it was wind chill factor 50. I woke up, I was working all night, and I had this view over the lake, and I watched this ice fog, which is really beautiful. If you've been in Cleveland, you know what I'm talking about. You can, ice fog is really beautiful when you get the sunshine on it, right? And that's what was going on. It was ice fog on the lake because it was minus 50 degrees. And the management at CES, which was the big consumer show, right? That's why the idea about the January CES is you showed ideas there, and then they had another show in June where you went and wrote purchase orders.
Right.
And so everybody at that show said, we're not going to come here again. And Vegas came in and made this big pitch. And that's why the CES show is still the biggest show at Vegas, right? Because everybody said, screw it, we're going to go to Vegas, right? But anyhow, Roach came up to the room and we showed him that we had just gotten the CRT. I had to buy a book from, he was the guy that did the first portable book. Osborne, Adam Osborne had written this book. He'd written this book on how to make a CRT work. And so we had built it and we had the CRT upside down and we had to call some people. We got the CRT up just about the time Roach walked in. And he looked at it and started sitting down negotiating with Trammell. Well, Trammell had put all his money into this thing, hoping to save his calculator business. And so he said to Roach, look, I'll tell you what, you can have exclusive on this product, but you got to carry all my calculators. And Roach had just signed a deal with TI and some other people. He said, no, John. And besides, he didn't like Trammell very much. And anybody else.
At this point, sorry, it should be pointed out that in 75, Commodore, who were king of the calculators, they bought MOS technology.
Right, and they bought it. So matter of fact, if you want, we'll take a side story. Let's do that simple side story. Jack Trammell had a guy who had actually worked with me way back when we had our own company, a little bit, by the name of Andre Suzanne, who was working for a company that was hot dog company, but it went away. And Andre really did understand semiconductor processing and semiconductor products, and he was really trained in that stuff as well as applications. He was a very broad guy, and he was Jack's engineering manager. And Trammell started running into problems with TI, kicking his butt, and so he decided that they would design their own chips and get them built, and they were getting them built at a couple of guys in Palo Alto, and it worked for him, all right? But the high-end calculator chips were the only ones that were really doing well, and MOS technology was way ahead of everybody. Well, the problem with MOS technology was that they had been backed by a company called Allen Bradley, who had put a bunch of money in and then decided they want to get in. Particularly when Motorola sued him, they just said, screw it, we'll give you the company, goodbye. Right? And so,
and everyone should know Allen Bradley because they're the famous programmable logic control.
Yeah, well, more importantly,
they used to own they started MOS Tech as an internal
Yeah, but more importantly, they were the leader in making RAMs. I mean, packages of resistors, capacitors. They were you bought Allen Bradley resistors and capacitors back in those days, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they were there.
Right.
And anyhow, so the MOS technology was under financial pressure because we'd had to settle up and it cost $1 million to fight a lawsuit like that. And so they were under some financial pressure, and they could see that the calculator business was about to go off a cliff, okay? And the reason that you could see it was going to go off the cliff is the Japanese had introduced the concept of the LCD calculator, right?
Right.
And
versus the super high end.
Yeah. I mean, they were still selling calculators that were better than HP and everything else, and they sold for a while. Yep. But they were P-channel product, right, versus CMOS product, no LCDs, right, and the market went off a cliff, right. Just like them.
And didn't TI come in as well? They were making
TI was a major
chips, and then
player.
They decided to come in.
They were a major player, right, in the calculator.
And then they decided, well, we don't want to make chips anymore. We want to make the calculators as well. And then everyone, and they just destroyed.
Anyhow, but that's why. They bought MOS technology so that they would have their own high-end calculator P-channel capability, right? And Suzanne was absolutely pushing Jack to do it because he talked to me and he and I wanted to do the PET, okay? All right? And so he got me out there, and we kind of lied to Jack and said we'd have it ready to go in January, and we got it far enough along so that he backed us, and we had the show So Suzanne was very important to this. And I got to tell you, one of Suzanne's major contributions to that was this was the year that when you went down to the local store in Los Gatos, you bought a product called a Pet Rock, right?
Yes, which lasted 6 months or something.
Anyhow, people were all buying pet rocks, right? Because they didn't require walking around the block. They didn't require being fed. You didn't have to feed them little bird if it was a snake, So it was a hot product. And so Andre said, we got to make this computer appear to be warm and fuzzy. So we're going to call it Pet, all right? And so we decided we'd call it Pet. That's good, okay? And we put a name on it called Personal Electronic Transactor, just so that we would have an excuse for it. But the funniest thing is that Andre was from France, right? And he ultimately left Commodore because Commodore and he parted companies. He went over to Apple, and he got the European distribution rights for the Apple, which at the time Apple went public made him one of the richest owners in Apple because they had to buy the distribution rights back from him for an enormous amount of stock. Anyhow, in France, PET has a word like SHIT,
negative connotation,
big connotation. So when we sold it in France, we had to call it PET, right? And not Pet.
Like actually spelled out, like MLS.
So, well, it was funny. But anyhow, but Andre named it. Everybody says, why did you name it Pet? We did because we wanted it to be warm and friendly, right? We told everybody, we're making warm, friendly computers, right? And we packaged it up in the case and got it working. And we took it to Dallas. And at Dallas was one of the last of the big computer shows. There used to be a show once a year, or maybe twice a year, where all the big computer guys got together and showed off what was going to happen next in the computer industry. And IBM one year went out and showed everybody why online really worked, right, at one of these shows.
Right.
And so you had people like Univac and DEC and everybody were selling these computers during this time.
Didn't work so well for them.
Well, no.
Overall.
No, but when it worked, I mean, come on, man, the PDP-11 and
they were huge.
They made Ken Olsen a rich man, right? And they had the show down in Dallas, and they had decided that computer stores and everything were taking off a little bit, and Radio Shack said they were going to go into business but hadn't gone in yet, and so forth. So there was a big show in Palo Alto in the spring, right? And there was a guy by the name of how can I forget his name? He's one of the lead.
Pape.
What? Sorry, pardon my language. But anyhow, geez, I'll get his name in a minute. He decided to put together this show to show that personal computers were real, right? And he set this show up in Palo Alto, and he was charging people $25 to go to the show. And we had a prototype of the Pet there, and Apple had a prototype of the stuff they were doing, and it was a whole bunch of people. But Trammell was totally impressed with the fact that all these people were lining up outside to pay $25 just to go look at computers, right? I mean, it convinced it was a real product. So as a result of that show and a couple others, the people in Dallas decided and they created a thing in the basement that they called the Computer Boutique, okay? Mm-hmm. And we took the first set of Pets that worked there. Right?
That worked.
Okay, well, no, I mean, come on, you're in the middle of prototypes, right?
Yeah,
and,
of course.
So we had the prototypes. We actually built them on boards and all that stuff. We took them there, and we set them up, and we had demos, and then I gave them speeches and demos and so forth, and we were selling the computer there, right? You could buy the computer there.
Right.
Now, Jack Trammell came to me about 3 months before, and he says, we're going to be like Hewlett-Packard when we do this computer. And I was thinking he meant like high quality and big image and all that stuff. He said, no. When Radio Shack when HP brought out that fancy programmable calculator, you had to pay them full price up front, and they might ship it to you in 3 months. right?
Okay, right.
And he said, the only way I'm going to have money enough to do this is if we do the same thing with the computer. So
take pre-orders.
At this show, my wife is sitting there. She was the guy that sold Steve Jobs his first 6502, by the way. So she's sitting there taking these orders, and people would come up, and they were standing in the back of the room saying, "Take my check next," right? You know, it was a big fight. There was a stack of people sending checks up, and she would put them down in a book, put them on a list, tell them what their number was, right? Yeah. And we took their full money, right?
And what was the money? I just give us a relative.
It was about, I think it was like $550 is what we're selling it for.
Solid. I think, yeah. It's a solid amount of money, but still affordable for the time, right? I mean, like,
oh no, yeah. I mean, it was cheaper than a stereo system, right?
And it included the CRT. Right.
Oh, it had everything.
Oh, yeah, it was all built
the
whole thing.
Yeah, it was a real computer that you could use now.
Yep.
Right. And once I showed people it ran BASIC and you could do it, we couldn't stop it. Right. I mean, it was going to go. Right. It was absolutely going to go. So I just want to tell that story about we're sitting down. So I decided to take a break, and the next to last afternoon of the show. And this room is full of people sending checks up to my wife. And we're totally taken over the downstairs. And I walk upstairs to where the computers were. I used to go to these shows. And there was nobody there. It was just a salesman talking to the salesman. Nobody wanted to talk about big computers. They wanted to be downstairs buying their own computer, right? And that was the beginning, right? We had guys signing up to be distributors. I mean, people looked at it and realized that they were at the beginning of a revolution, right? Yeah. So Radio Shack finished their machine because come out and they couldn't, and they brought it out, and it was a really nice looking product. They brought it out in the fall at another show. The problem is they didn't have enough ROM space, so they built in Tiny Basic. Mm-hmm. Okay, now Tiny Basic's a nice little basic if you want to just screw around, right? But it doesn't do what Real Basic does, right? The basic you're used to. Okay, so they got an instant reject, right? People bought them and they realized they didn't do what they wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. Apple, we go back to, we tell the story about Apple's tie to getting started. When we went to the West Coast to do the computer, we wanted to be able to make the show, and rather than design our own boards and stuff before we got there, my marketing guy went around and found 2 or 3 people, including Apple, that was working on a board. Mm-hmm. So that we brought Apple over, and Jack said, "Look, you got a little company. I want to get you into my company." He made him an offer for the company, which Jobs turned down immediately. Yep. But luckily, they had found
$150,000, wasn't it?
I don't know what it was. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because Mike Markkula had decided to fund them.
Right. And okay. So they weren't going to accept anything.
Markkula made it happen, right? Markkula made that company happen. He was Markkula understood marketing, and he had good money. And he made it happen. He brought a team in from the guys from Intel that he brought in.
So Apple weren't going to sell at any price at that point.
Well, I don't think he would have sold at any price. But anyhow, while Jobs is in negotiating, he'd met Woz and everything, but Woz and I are sitting down, and I was explaining to Woz what we're doing and asked him if he wanted to sell us his machine. And Woz said, "You're wrong. What you're doing is incorrect. What people want," because I spend time with these guys at the computer groups. Mm-hmm. What they want is a machine they can go in and write their own code in assembly language, right?
Okay.
So he invented a thing called Sweet 16, which is kind of like a super compiler for the 6502. Mm-hmm. And they built that in at the beginning when they sold a computer. Well,
The Apple II we're talking about?
The original Apple II started out without a BASIC in it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it was you can find out if you look at shows and everything, they'll tell you about it.
But it never shipped without BASIC, is that correct?
No, it did ship without BASIC.
Oh, really?
They shipped some, not big numbers. Remember, at this point in time, people were busting their ass to ship 1,000 machines in a week, right? I mean, this is at the beginning, right? Okay. Pardon my swearing every so often. I was born in Maine, so some swear words are part of the vocabulary.
We got an Aussie here. He's basically that.
Yeah, swear like a drunken
He fights
sailor.
to find any pronouns, let alone non-swear words. You know?
Right. Anyhow, I think we get. We were talking about
Sweet 16 and the assembly.
So what happened was Markkula quickly figured out that he'd made a mistake, right? So he went to Gates and said, I want to buy the same BASIC that's in the Commodore. Yep. Now, Gates and I had a deal. He could sell it to anybody he wanted to. He could clone it, right? I mean, I didn't care, right? Because we bought it cheap. And so he negotiated a much higher price than we paid with Apple, and they paid it. And then Radio Shack came in and discovered and said, listen, Tiny BASIC isn't working. We've got a way to jumper an extra ROM into our machine, and we want to buy the BASIC. And John Roach said to Gates, why don't you take a royalty, right? I want to sell a bunch of these. Why don't you take a royalty? And Gates said, nah, 6502 BASIC is not going to, no, it was 88. It was 88. But he said, no. He said, I want to get paid up front, because he was financing his company at that point, right? And so he got Roach to pay at least double what Apple paid. And so all of a sudden, our BASIC became the standard, right?
Right.
And everybody that bought a machine after that, and that's very important when we talk about MS-DOS.
Yeah.
Okay, so you bought a personal computer, you had to have BASIC. And that's what sold it, right? People just bought them, used them. We went to one show one time, and this lady came up to me and said, I want to know where we are on the priority list, because we're still taking money in advance and when we're going to ship. And we said, well, we can't take you out of loop on the priority list, so we'll try to tell you how much time it is. She says, you've got to do something. We decided that all of us in my house wanted to use the computer. So we drew lots for who had time. And my time is between 2 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning. She's the mother.
Yeah, I'm so tired. I just want to program.
It says, you got to save me, right? Get me a machine, right? But that tells you how much in love people fell with those machines, right? It really and truly created the industry, right?
Yeah.
And we sold a lot of them. We sold a lot of them in Europe. Ultimately, Apple sold some here. Radio Shack sold a lot of them for the same reason. They were built in and they worked together. And
what was the name of the Radio Shack machine?
The Trash 80 Model 1.
Oh, Trash 80.
TRS-80.
Yeah, right.
TRS-80, yeah.
Why did they go with the Z80 in that instead of the 6502?
Just because of the fact that he had somebody in Texas that thought it was better. Remember, TI had come out with a machine similar during that time.
Yes.
With a machine based around their microprocessor.
The 994A, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, no, he just got, he delegated it, right? And that's why Tiny BASIC was in there. Right. John was a production marketing guy. He didn't know anything about the technology. He just hired people, and he was a good guy. I mean, he's a really good guy, but he didn't have a clue why. And, I told you why they wanted to do it, and they did accomplish that. They basically ultimately killed the computer stores, right?
Yep.
And Fry's helped a lot there, too. But the big thing about it is at that point, we went another way. We went into Europe, and the Europeans bought the machines as the way we talk. But most of them bought it because they were mini computer customers, and they weren't getting that kind of support. And the guys who installed the mini computers just became dealers. And so we started getting upgrade machines. We built the machine with the 2 disk drives, and I designed the first Epson printer and put the printer in. So we had a machine that was a pretty serious machine, right? Okay. And we were selling a lot of them. And the reason I want to tell that story is because what happened was we got the U.S. going one way and the other. And then Clive Sinclair came out with the thing, what was it called? The Sinclair, whatever
ZX80.
it was. ZX80.
Yep.
And it was selling very well, right? Because it was cheap. Right?
It was $99, yeah.
Yeah, it was cheap. Okay. And we had designed I'd gone to Apple and come back, and Trammell basically charged me and my group with designing a machine that would kill the Apple, right?
Right.
So we had come up with a machine that ultimately was the C64.
It wasn't the VIC-20?
No. We did the machine with C64, but the problem was we were depending on MOS technology having the video interface.
Got it.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a minute and deviate and talk about video interfaces because it's really important.
Yeah, let's get technical.
Okay. Well, no, not that. It's just I'm going to take you. We're going down several paths, and I'm trying to keep you abreast of them.
Yep.
We had done the PAT. I mean the 6502. After we finished that thing at the MacArthur Suite, I drove up to Grass Valley. And the reason I was in Grass Valley was when I was doing the marketing for MOS Technology. One weekend, the president and my guy who helped me do the patent and all this other stuff threw me out of the building because I wasn't getting the manuals done, right? And so I was forced to stay home and finish the manuals. But during this period of time, well, it's a funny story. It's been well known that I was thrown out of the building until we finished the manual, but the manuals turned out so well, everybody really loved them. But during this time, I was accumulating. My people were taking the phone messages, right? So I'd get a copy of the phone messages, and most of them I would just pass off to somebody or just ignore. But I saw this one from Grass Valley, California. Now, if you guys know California, probably you don't, but Grass Valley is partway up in the mountains, and it's in the middle of wine country, and it's where. Right? It's a nice place, but it's nowhere. Right. And I said, what the hell are we doing with a company in Grass Valley interested in my 6502? So I call the guy up.
Let me guess, it's the Grass Valley Group?
Yes. He's the guy.
Called it.
John LaCour, right? He was the guy. He said, I'm Steve LaCour. He said, I'm the advanced arm for Atari. Now, we've been selling 6800 product to Atari, and we've been working Atari, but as the guys making the programmable games, right? But he said, my job is to come up with the follow-on to the Pong. You know how Pong happened, right? Pong was a bar machine. Pong was a bar machine.
Yep.
Right?
As in used in a bar.
Yeah, no, only because that's what I did. What's the guy's name who started it? Atari.
Oh, last name Bushnell, is it?
Bushnell, yes. Nolan Bushnell. He had come out of one of the big companies like Xerox one of those places. But he had kind of a bad background. He'd done a lot of things, and he'd been involved with bar machines, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, if I put this machine into bars, I can collect quarters, right?
Yeah.
So he and this guy Alcorn, who was also at the same company, they designed the first Pong machine, put it in a bar, took the quarters from there, built another one, kept doing, and they built an entire company about quarters from a bar machine. Okay. Okay, so Pong was created in bars, right?
Yep.
And this company in Florida called Allied Leisure looked at what he's doing. They were making a lot of game stuff, and they ripped him off and actually outsold him and caused him all kinds of trouble, to the point that they did secrecy things after that were really overwhelming. right? Atari did, because this guy had ripped them off. But they had decided that they could make a portable version of Pong, right? So they designed it, and they had it ready to go. And it was relatively close to Christmas time. I think they missed both CESs, right? So they went to Sears with this thing ready to go, and went to the guys who would be in the where would sell the TVs, and the guys that sold the stereos and everything, and they told them, we don't need it, right? We got our fall special all planned out and everything. And somehow or other they met the guy who was in charge of the sporting goods section. And he says, I don't have a hot product to draw people into my store.
The sporting goods
section.
And
that's my job. Yeah. That's my job, is to bring people in. So he put the original Atari Pong in the sporting goods section at Sears and created an industry. Right?
I love it.
Because it just took off, right? It became the hot gift for that year. And people were coming by and buying footballs at the same time. And they weren't over in the stereo department. And it just took off, right?
Do you think that is why mass adoption happened, is because there was just that exposure, or is it just because it was that different and fun for people?
Well, Atari was the original Pong. I don't know if you ever used it. We used it and played it until we died.
Yeah,
it was considering when it was done, it was really exciting, right? I mean, it did things that you'd never done with your TV before, right? I mean, it was so. Then, but they decided that they wanted to make a really programmable game so they could sell the games, right? You know, the theory behind the programmable game business, you sell the console for nothing and you sell the games, right? And so that's what LaCure's job was, is to do that. And so he invited us up. We went up to Grass Valley. We sat down with him, blocked out a program. I went back to Pennsylvania. We sat down and agreed on a budget for him where we lowered the price of the processor plus his RAM IO chip to $12. Okay. Now this is at a time, remember, everybody else is selling microprocessors and IO devices for hundreds of dollars, right? But we knew we could build it and make money, right? We absolutely knew we could do it. So we signed up with them, and they said, okay, LaCure got an agreement that they would design a custom chip. And the guys who designed a custom chip were the guys who were our second source, called Cindertech, right? So the guy who did the what's the second machine Commodore did? It was not the apricot. It was something like that. A word like that, though. Anyhow, it was a something, right? Anyhow, but they hired this guy from Cindertech, and he went up there and they showed him how to make the IO device that made the game work, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the guys at MOS Technology, at the same time as that was going on, had come up with their own version of a thing to make a game, right?
Yeah.
And I was under this absolute, we'll kill you if you tell anybody, deal with Atari, right? Because remember, they were so right. So I couldn't tell the guys at MOS Technology, you're on the wrong track, right? I mean,
this whole industry is so incestuous.
I literally had to let them finish it, and they actually put this thing out, and some guys, two or three guys built game products and sold them against Atari with this product for a while. Okay. And then we came up with an agreement with them that they would go off and design a machine that ultimately became the driver for the C64, right? And they were supposed to be off and designing that. And we did the rest of the computer that was going to be, and we said we could build this computer for under $100, so we can sell it for $100. That's the plan. And Sinclair came out after we'd done that, right? And Trammell fell in love with Sinclair, and so one of the guys by the name of Bill Seiler, and don't lose track of that name, he's a really important guy. Mm-hmm. Bill Seiler had come up with the idea of the VIC-20, right? He'd shown it to Trammell, and Trammell was pissed at us because he said, you're supposed to have done the product that will kill the Apple, and that product won't kill Apple, right? It did kill Sinclair, but it won't kill Apple. And we said, well, we have to wait for MOS Technology to finish the chip because we needed what became the C64 interface. And so he actually rejected it, and then he went to Europe and decided he wanted to do complete with Sinclair, and so he let a team inside of inside of Commodore, complete the VIC-20. A guy by the name of Taz Yurikora, right? He's the guy that did that, not all the people you hear, right? Al Charpentier did the basic product, right? But Yurikora is the guy that made it happen, right?
Got it.
And so, and I'm not taking anything away from Charpentier, but Taz understood how to put a product into production and got it packaged and did all the other stuff and made it successful. And, it took off. Well, right about that time, Turmel decided he was going to get rid of me and a couple of the other guys that had built the computer business because he thought we were rebelling because we told him we wanted to do a machine like the MS-DOS machine. Yeah. We said this industry is about to split in two. And in Europe, we're already selling a higher-end machine. So we can go do the VIC-20. We've got it all done. We can do the 664 when it's done. You don't have to worry about it. It'll get done, right? But we need to go off and start a company to go chase this thing, which is going to be the big computer market, right?
Yep.
I mean, It's very nice. You need
IBM
these
market. Yep.
That market that became the PC market, right? But it was obvious it was there, right? And you couldn't do a 6502. You needed a new processor. You needed everything new, right? But it was okay. We knew how to do it. And because we proposed it, he threw us out of the company.
Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know.
Great thinking.
So we went off and did it for ourselves. And then, of course, he sued us. And we had to fight that battle. But anyhow, the point is that it was a time to create a new industry, right? Something that was not being sold in Sears, right? Mm-hmm. But something that was being sold in a more serious way because it'd be a more serious computer. And I want to back up one place just so that you understand the evolution. Kit computers had a function. Yeah. When you built it, it worked. Now, the guy, Bill Seiler, who did the VIC-20 and the C64, was in Florida working with the company, Allied Leisure, that had knocked off Atari, and we were building a pinball game built around microprocessor. And I'm sitting in a place, and Seiler was one of the earliest hobbyists, and he built this machine, and he got it all built up, and he ran it, and it played the Star Spangled Banner. And I said, okay, now what are you going to do with it? He says, I don't know. I just built this thing right.
It did what I asked it to.
Yeah. And he was one of the guys in these computer clubs. He was in a computer club that ripped off Bill Gates' BASIC.
Okay? Right, the old paper tape, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Gates
they made copies of the paper. Yeah, he wrote the famous open letter to hobbyists. Yep.
So guess one of the few people that ever responded to the open letter to Bill Gates? Bill Seiler. Right. Bill Seiler sent him the money. Send him the money. Gates remembers that. Send him the money saying, I'm sorry I stole this, right? And Gates remembered that because he was one of the few people that did it, right? And of course, that didn't happen with us because they were all in ROM, and it was a totally different place, right?
Yeah.
But the point was, and so I stole Seiler, right? And he helped do the original PET, right? He was one of the guys who did the original PET. He did the C64, he did the VIC-20. So he was a major creator of what was the hobby computer business. So whatever you want to call, what is a C64? Kids bought it for games. They had great games on it. Yep. But every kid that used that machine became computer literate. I would go into Kmart or something and talk to a bunch of kids that were over there, and we'd sit down and they'd demo that they could write a program.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you had to if you wanted to make your own games, right?
Exactly.
It just didn't matter. You just learned, right? I mean, it was so easy to learn. So they sold the concept to parents, buy this thing called the C64 for your kids to be computer literate. The kids were buying it because of the games, but whether they liked it or not, they became computer literate. Okay, so we had created an entire generation between the BASIC and the other stuff in the generations. We created an entire generation of people that were what is now today called understood to be computer literate. But because you've already moved on to your smartphones and everything else, you don't even care that you're computer literate, right?
Yeah.
But you do write text. Anyhow, the point is that Silo was in at the beginning, right? And Glenn Stark, the guy I was talking to when you originally called me, he did the floppy, and that's going to become an important part of this next story. Okay, so now we've got a new company and multiple new companies.
Which is Sirius.
It was called Sirius Systems Technology.
Yep.
And because we took computers seriously, right? And
is that why you named it that?
Absolutely.
Right.
Remember Sirius? No. I did it for another reason, which everybody would laugh about. I wanted the name Sirius, which I like, but Sirius is a 2-star system. Did you know that?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, it's a binary star system. Yeah.
Right. So I could make a logo that had a nice bright sun and then a dark hole out of the side of the sun. Now, what does that remind you of?
Is the Commodore logo?
No, the Apple logo.
The Apple logo. Oh, like the,
right?
Like the bite out of the apple.
Yes, of course. Right.
It looked exactly like the bite out of the apple, right?
Nice.
And so that's one of the reasons we made it Sirius. The other one was because we could play with the word Sirius 1, and now we got Sirius 2. We had a lot of fun with it.
Right.
And
this is before the Sirius Cybernetic Corporation and Hitchhiker's Guide?
No. Anyhow, so we went to Intel because we said we need a new computer. And David, who I had worked with in 1960 at the computer lab, was the guy running that. He was a really smart guy, went on to be a venture capital guy. And he had insisted that the 8086 have an 8-bit version. And the reason he did, which is the reason we all bought it, was because RAM was so goddamn expensive.
Yeah.
Right?
So you want to use half of them. That's right.
Seriously.
You want an 8-bit bus.
You want an 8-bit bus, right? And so we signed up for the 8080, and he committed to us in writing that it would always be second sourced. Okay? Big lie. And so we were 2 weeks behind IBM when we made that commitment. We then flew up to Washington to sign up for the basic, right? And we had already signed up with CPM because they're right down the street from us. And while we're there, I met with Gates, who I had cheated on the original basic, but because IBM was up to see him because every personal computer had to have basic in it, right?
Yep.
So they left a big session at CPM place. They left this big session because CPM would not sign the contract they wanted to sign. And
they wouldn't. Well, he was famously out flying a plane, wasn't he?
No, total lie.
Total lie? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, what is CPM as well? Sorry,
quick. Control program for microcomputers. It was the dominant operating system.
Dominant operating system.
Okay. Dominant operating system before DOS.
It was the only operating system that let you build something, right? I mean, you had to have an operating system. It was designed for the new 8-bit machines with much of memory and everything. So it was the right solution. And IBM would have signed up. The problem they have, and they kept telling them that, right? The guys that were out there negotiating said, we can't sign that contract. Now, you guys probably don't remember that there was a time when IBM 360 was so dominant, it killed companies like GE and everything. Okay, the Europeans and the Americans sued IBM for restraint of trade, right?
Right.
And IBM did some very famous things to fight the government. Government subpoenaed a bunch of documents, and IBM sent them truckloads.
Buried them with paperwork.
IBM could afford the lawyers, and the government didn't have enough, right? And
that's how they worked. Yep.
Yeah, it was.
That's how IBM did business. Yeah,
they're tough guys, right?
Yeah.
And so they had signed a consent decree They said they would always support open source on their stuff. Okay. So there was no question about MS-DOS was going to be open source, right? Okay. And the guys at CPM had a clause that said they couldn't distribute it or whatever. And they kept saying, we can't sign that, right? Yeah. And here's this room, Mrs. CPM and Phil, sitting there with the IBM guys, and they're really serious. They want to do this. They absolutely got to do it because they've got everything else coming in. They signed up floppy for the, for everything. And Phil would walk out of the room and walk next door, and there's Kildall and his lawyer. And the lawyer kept saying to Kildall, listen, we've signed up there were a whole bunch of guys making CPM machines that were paying good royalties, right? They were doing well, they were paying good royalties. And he said, TI came in, they didn't do shit. DEC came in, they didn't do shit. IBM's not going to do shit either.
You're right.
Make them stay with our contract, because otherwise we'll have to go back and redo our contracts with all these other guys, right?
Got it.
And so they left. And when they sat down with Gates, they said to Gates, after they signed the basic contract, which Gates was happy to sell it. At that time, Gates was getting royalties for everything because the Japanese had taught him that, right?
Yes,
and,
they did.
And they said to him, would you please call Kildall, because we don't have an operating system.
Yeah, I know. He practically told him to, go back to digital research and talk to him.
No. What he said was, he had an offer from the guys that sold him the MS-DOS. And he said, Kildall won't do it. You call him up and ask him. If he won't do it, I'll do it. And they signed the MS-DOS contract right then. Okay.
Yep. Even though Microsoft didn't have one, but they knew they might be able to get one.
They had the offer from those guys. They'd actually seen.
Oh, they actually had the offer for the
MS-DOS clone, right? That was done up in Washington.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, they had it, and they paid those guys like $100,000 for it.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it was. I think it was like $50,000 or something. It wasn't much. That's right. Bought the rights to MS-DOS.
But I just want to point out to everybody that if I hadn't done the basic with Gates, he wouldn't have had them on his doorstep with that opportunity. Okay,
right? Because it had to be in everything, anyways, right? That's the idea.
Right. And so 2 weeks later, we walk into Gates. Gates says, "I got this deal with Microsoft, with IBM. I'm going to do this thing called MS-DOS." And we said, "Great, we'll sign a license." We signed a license with Gates, and we signed a license with CPM, and we first shipped our original machines with both for a short time.
Right.
But MS-DOS took off, right, and CPM stopped. And so we were the first people with an MS-DOS license, period.
Right.
Second, 2 weeks behind IBM. Right. So now we're going to do our computer. We get our computer ready to launch. We launch it. We take it to the shows, and IBM is out there with a floppy that's got 300 kilobytes on it, and we've got a megabyte, right? We've got a much better screen. They don't have a screen, right? We had put in voice recognition or voice results, right? We put in the audio stuff.
Nice.
And it's a nicely packaged product. So guess who won Computer of the Year? We did, right? And we were outselling. We signed Ford Motor Company. We signed a whole bunch of people, right, as the customers. And we were getting ready to change the industry that next year. We knew we were going to change the industry that next year. I started working with Juggy Tan, and he was making my floppies for me. And he had a deal with me that I would use his hard disk, right?
Yep.
So we got ready to go for the Comdex show. I think it was Comdex. I think it was pretty sure it was Comdex. Anyhow, we got ready to go to the show, and Juggy's ready. He said, I can start supporting you with this 5 megabyte drive.
5 meg, woohoo!
Wait a minute. IBM was 340 KB on the floppy. Okay,
I know.
5 meg looked like a lot.
You beat them to the hard drive. You were the first ones to use the hard drive.
No, we were absolutely. I had designed the product around the hard drive. We knew we were going to put a hard drive on. We came out of the industry. I did my first hard disk patent in 1962. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So everybody still uses it. As you go out across the disk, you get more space under the head. It's called zoning. Yeah. So then as soon as you get to a certain place in the zone, you start recording at maximum frequency again.
So you've got a patent on hard drive zoning.
Yeah.
Or had, because it's expired now, right?
1962, right?
Wow.
Guess what?
Oh,
right?
Nice.
Yeah, anyhow, the point was, but we used that technique on all of our machines. That's why we had a couple megabytes when they only had 343, but whatever. So I'm getting ready. I go to the show. I build up some samples. We set them in the back room where in the booth. And I got 5 machines with 5 megabytes in them, and I've got the operating. Now, I went to Gates before that show. We were at a show in Southern California, and we're arguing outside of Disneyland because Apple's throwing a big party at Disneyland. We're having an argument about the fact that I was going to launch my hard drive at that show, and I had to have the DOS for it, right? And he basically said, I can't do it, right? So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I had the team, and we did it. And we gave it to him. Right?
Why did he say that?
Because he was working on floppies. They were doing the DOS.
So he didn't believe hard drives were important at that time?
He just felt he didn't have the resources, and it wasn't.
Oh, right.
Okay, so you'd have to write new code to talk to that hard drive.
Yep.
He had to see it, and he didn't see it yet. Gates was a smart guy, and very young guy, very smart guy. But he missed 2 or 3 things, right? He missed the internet, missed the hard drive, he missed the
Internet Explorer.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He did a great job with all the things he did, right? So he basically, standing outside on a traffic island outside of Disneyland, said, "You can do the DOS yourself, and we'll just support it," right?
Right.
And so we did. I had a team of really smart guys that were ready to do that, and they did it.
So you added hard drive support to MS-DOS?
Yes.
What version were we talking about here?
Before MS-DOS had any hard drive capability.
Right. That was like DOS. I think DOS 2, MS-DOS 2 had hard drive capability. I think, yes, it would have been 1.
I don't know. Whatever it was, we added it, right? Okay, so now we're going to the show, right? And I get up to everybody and announce that hard drive is the future of the personal computer. Mm-hmm. And everybody looks at me and says, listen, you got 2 megabytes on your double-sided floppies, and you're adding 5 megabytes. Who cares? And by the way, this is back when everybody thought 2 megabytes was plenty, right? Nowadays,
what else could you need?
Right?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Because you can buy as many floppies as you want, whereas a hard drive was expensive.
It doesn't matter. People just, we've taught everybody they needed a terabyte, Do you ever sit down and think about how long it would take you to type a terabyte into your computer?
Right.
Anyhow, and I said to them, very simple, this was editors, because we were famous by that point, right? With CZ4, we had all this stuff with one computer here. So I get the top editors and the top technical guys here in the room. And I said, it's the future computer. And they said, well, we're not so sure about that. So I said, listen, it's real easy. There are 5 machines set up in the back of the booth. Please go down and use it for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Every one of them came back and said, I'm never going to use a floppy disk machine again in my life.
Yep. Because they were just too slow and
they were totally different, right? It was a totally different experience running with a hard drive. Now, all of you've been running with hard drives forever, and they've slowed down and they've become more difficult to use. But you've noticed it, but it just happened to you slowly, right? Yep. And but it was just that was a major point for us. IBM had to go out and redesign the PC in order to be able to compete with us. And
which was the PC XT, which they came out, which supported hard drives,
which was done by a guy by the name of Joe Cerubi, who used to work with us at Tandon for a while. So I know he did it. Right. I know why he had to do it. The guys that had done the original PC were not that solid because they were outcasts, right? Well, Cerubi was a mainline smart guy. And
so you're saying this is even the PC that they showed up with that same show, they even had to redesign that then too, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The original PC, the XT was a redesign from the ground up, right? And and by the way, I don't know if you remember, they used the wrong disk supplier and they had to redo almost every XT they sold that year because all the disk drives died.
Who was that? Who were they using originally?
I can't remember. Some company that died in Southern California.
Right.
Well,
was it Connor or somebody like that?
No. It's way before Connor. No, it was just somebody. What happened is that IBM, because these guys were under all these constraints, the reason that they couldn't make a better initial machine is because IBM was in this war with Xerox over word processing systems, right? Remember, everybody was buying word processing back in that time, right? Yep. And it was a big deal. And Xerox had this big word processing system, and IBM had this big word processing system that was using the 8086. And so they constrained the PC so it didn't hurt that market. And
so they were like protecting margins, kind of thing.
Protecting the market, right? I mean, they thought these guys in down in Boca Raton were hit their head up their ass with I'm sorry.
That's totally IBM,
right? And
a business thing, right? I mean, just protecting not. Well, no,
the guys at the top end, I mean, that was their knockout. That's the reason that Juggy Tannen got the deal to do the floppy disk for them, is because the major supplier at that point was was owned by Xerox. So they basically made Juggy famous and rich because they were going around the industry looking for people that they didn't have to take care of people like Xerox with or Ampex and some of those other guys. So they went with this company that they shouldn't have, but and they got burned. But it didn't matter. They survived it, right? Partially helped because of Compaq, right? That was the year that you got to be a PC clone or you die thing happened.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. And we lost that company as a result of a bunch of things which I could get into and I won't bother. We made all of the bad mistakes that you can make as a management in terms of bankruptcy lawyers, boards of directors, financing. Right. You did everything wrong, and I lost my company. And we came back.
So it wasn't technical vision that killed you?
No. The problem was I had the technical vision. We had the technical division that we needed to go to PC clone. We had started a project inside the company, and my engineering manager killed it. And then Juggy and I were going to do. He had it, and he had to deal with IBM because of their license, and we could have done it, and I couldn't get by that time we were behind the curve on the management and the bankruptcy, and we just never did it. Well, we had the vision to do it, and we then 2 years later did that product for a company called Tandon, right, and built a big computer company in Europe for Tandon, right, which is the first. We did the clone of the AT. We started off doing the clone of the AT. Right.
Nice.
And we were the leading AT supplier for quite a while. And because we had built our own chipset and a couple other things that we'd done before chips and technology. And we had the low cost because we were making our own drives and so forth. So we went into Europe and did very well, selling PC clones, right? Yep. And just to finish the PC story, and I'm almost done. I'm sorry it's dragged on, but
that's good.
When we started that company with Tandem, we would come up with the idea that you needed to be able to move your files and your computer, the operating system, everything, and you shouldn't be able to move that from one computer to another. Okay.
As in clone it from, right?
Just literally, take the drive and move it.
Oh, actually take the drive out and bang.
Yeah, so we went to Juggy and said, we want to do this. And we went to Xerox, and Xerox did a case study, a couple, what are they called? Focus group studies. Right. And we had built this really nice, pretty new package for this thing. And people were in love with the package, right? Because at that point in time, the PC was still this ugly box because everybody was afraid. Everybody was afraid to do a product that wasn't IBM clone, right? So we did this
plastic.
We did this. We did this product, this new one with the removable drives and everything. And Xerox helped fund it, and we got started, and we did the thing. And we ultimately built that product, which had drives that Juggy had designed so that we would park the heads off in a special place, and you could take the drive out, put it in another machine at home, and if you dropped the drive on the way, you didn't hurt it. right? And
nice.
It was called the Data Pack Machine, and it won our 4th Computer of the Year. And it was the right idea, but Xerox had to drop out of it because of some internal politics. And right about that time was when the MR heads came along, and disks went from 10 megabytes or 20 megabytes to 100 megabytes to a terabyte in, 2 years, 3 years, right?
Something like that,
because of the technology that IBM brought in, and Seagate knocked it off finally and got away with it, right? And the Hammerhead and Tandon had to do Hammerheads. So the world just totally changed on hard drives. And so we didn't pursue it, right? We got it going and did well. And nowadays, if we put enough hardware on a USB 3, you could match it, right? Anyhow, the point is, and we had to do our own disk operating system for that, so we got pretty good at that. So the PC business, the people in Taiwan designed a clone operating, DOS, not DOS, the underlying BIOS, for all the guys in Taiwan. And then they did a couple of things to help the guys in Taiwan. And so all of a sudden, manufacturing went from Europe and the United States to Taiwan for computers. And then, of course, it ultimately gone to China, right? And because of that, the industry changed, right? And the other major change in the industry during that time is when we first started off, the guys that we were dealing with were guys who were drop out from DEC or drop out from someplace who were making their own dealer companies. And they really were applications engineers starting their own companies, right? So they were able to support customers, and that was a big deal in Europe. Having the dealer sell your machine and support it became the distribution channel for a long time, right?
And repair and everything else, right?
It was all there, right? You would, and what happened was, with the Taiwanese machines coming in, with the machines becoming more stable and not growing that much, you put more memory in, you put a better screen in, all that kind of stuff. But basically, it turned out that the high-tech stuff had gone away, right? And people started selling. Here comes Dell saying, I'll make it for you, right? Buy it from me, mail order. And then everybody else starts mailing mail order. And these guys who were the applications guys just got eaten up, right? So the computer dealer went away in Europe. And so that was a major structural change, right? But it happened over time. And the interesting thing now is if you look at Lenovo, who is the big player in China, what Lenovo did was to reestablish that kind of dealer network in China so that they could sell the computers to people that didn't have computers, right? And they're literally, one of their major strengths is they've got this massive dealer channel. There are people that are selling applications and installing machines and so on. And in China, they have to do that, right? I mean, the people are not here in this country. You're computer literate enough, you've done it and all sort of thing. You just go order another machine, right? Or maybe you go down to Best Buy or Fry's, but in general, a lot of people are buying a mail order, right? And the point is that it totally changed the world. And it was just funny that his Lenovo in a brand new country with enormous amount of potential, going back to the old dealer network concept, because they need to be able to help people understand what this thing is they just bought. Right. And the application. So it's kind of an interesting thing to watch that evolve, right, around the world, right? Okay. So what we've done is we've gotten to machines that are very ubiquitous, right? You buy your machine, and we've slowly narrowed it down to either buy it from somebody who makes their own and rolls it up for you, or you buy it from mail order, right? And that's the PC business in the world. In India, it's mostly guys rolling their own. In the U.S., it's mostly people buying mail order, right?
Got it.
And so we decided that there wasn't a spot for us in that, right? So it turns out that I had invented a patent on the way to use partial DRAM. All right. so that when you build a DRAM or you build a flash device, they are 15 to 20% of the parts don't meet spec, right?
Right,
sometimes
dead
more
cells
than
or something like that.
Sometimes, whatever reason.
Right.
And so those are sold at substantial discount to people who can find a way to use them. And we had this patent, so we could put two bad ones together and make a good one. And we did pretty well with that for a while. And then we cut a deal with Micron, so that we learned how to actually fix bad chips. And so we bought their real junk and $2 million a month and tested them.
How do you fix bad silicon?
You actually, every DRAM you buy has been fixed. Right? Nobody knows how to make they go in and laser them in. Okay? Yeah. Micron has a patent on being able to go in with a fuse. So they can do it anytime in the system along. Right? And Micron's the only people who can do that. Right? Now, flash, they use flash fuses effectively, so they don't have the same issue, and there's much less repair done at the wafer level. But and there's much less repair done, and you can't make a hard. We were doing repair, and we would sometimes repair 1,000 repairs, each of which took a certain amount of time, right? And we did that by taking them off the teradynes and wafer places people did it and putting them on a little board that did it, right? And so we could do this repair, and then we get a chip that we paid 25 cents for and put together with one we paid $1 and sell them both for $4, right? They're on DIMMs. And nice business.
Yeah.
Except the problem with the PC business, with the DRAM business, is that there was a period of time when the DRAM business was the golden boys, right? They were the top of the line,
Absolutely.
Right? So guys like the steel company in Japan and a whole bunch of people built fabs, right? And right about the time they built fabs, people quit buying new PCs. Okay.
What is the time frame here, just for reference?
About that would be 2000 and something, right? If you look at it, the fastest way to find it out is go do a search on something like Micron and look and find out when they were losing $1 billion a quarter. Okay.
This is post because I remember there was a big price fixing thing with the DRAM as well.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. But fundamentally, what happened is that they had so much capacity that the price fell below 50 cents. And it cost 50 cents to package a part. So those guys were building, you can't shut a production line down. So they're building all these parts and selling them at a loss, right? Well, you sell a lot of DRAMs at a loss and you lose a lot of money. So what they did is they got together somewhere, they won't admit this, but they got together somewhere, and all the major semiconductor players, which by this time was basically Micron, Samsung, Toshiba, some guys like that, they agreed to cut over half their capacity over to flash. At the time, they didn't think it was such a great idea, but they decided to do it. And they quit selling partial memories, down memories, which put us out of business. But anyhow, having swapped over to flash was the best thing that ever happened to them, because by that time, Jobs had come up with the iPad. Is it not the iPad? The iPod, right?
iPod, right, yeah.
Right, which was flash-based, right?
The first one was a hard drive, but then the Nano and the little ones.
Okay. Then right behind that was the cell phone, right, which used a bunch of flash. And then, of course, right behind that was the iPad, right? And then finally the laptops use an SSD, right? And then in between times, everybody came up with the USB, the SSD, and the SD and the micro SD, right? Which was required to make cameras, right? I mean, to make cell phones, you had to have micro SD. So what happened was, flash suddenly became the thing that you made money on, right?
The new darling of the industry,
right?
Yeah.
And
that's when I got hired. That was my first job out of school.
Is that right? And people like SanDisk went from nothing to mega billion companies, right? And Toshiba, these guys, the ones that survived, became major players, and most of them got out of the DRAM business, right? There's only 2 or 3 guys making DRAM. because the flash business worked, and it's going to keep working because it keeps getting bigger, right? There's always a new application for flash. So we came up with an invention that lets us buy all of the junk flash and make it all good.
And the companies will still sell you the junk flash?
Oh, they love to. They sell 15%.
Oh, okay,
right.
Right. No. 50% of their wafers are 50% of their chips are bad.
15%. 15% of every chip. 15% of every. Yep. Yeah. No, they have businesses. Company like Spectec at Micron has made millions for the company. No, it's a business. Fallout parts are business, and but just that we have an ability to take a chip that other people call a half good or a quarter good, and we can make it all good without doing the repair or anything like that. It's just a patent that was obvious, but I'm the one that got it. Okay, so
awesome.
But the concept of the USB was essential to help grow the PC business, right? If you think about it, right.
Just for like the standardization of the bus, you mean? Or?
No, it's just everybody got machines where they could load code and they could send stuff around. They could do everything, right? So the SD card made the cameras obsolete, right? And the USB eliminated floppies. You can't buy and take a look at a new machine from anybody. You don't have a hard drive on it. I mean, you don't have a disk on it. You don't have anything on it except the USB port. Right.
With the extreme example being that new Apple with just the one USB port total.
Yeah. No, but the point is that it became ubiquitous. It really and truly changed the way, and people don't have any objections at all to stuffing something in and handing it to somebody else, and that kind of stuff. It's the technique, right? Although now with the cloud and everything, it's less important, but it was still a very important part of they sell lots of them, right? And USB 3 was a legitimate extension, and they sell a lot of them. And over time, they'll sell a lot more, right? But the thing that, and if you don't mind, I think let's make sure we got all the history right, so we didn't lose anybody along the way. We talked about hard drives.
We don't want to insult anyone by not referencing it.
No. I just want to make sure that you understood that guys like Seiler and Stark and those guys created these industries, but they got no credit for it, right? Guys like Stark and Stark, Seiler, and Scott Patterson did all the disk stuff that needed to be done. Seiler was one of the pioneers in screens, right? In making screens happen. He was one of the pioneers in the audio stuff, right? So, what happened is you got a few people that created this industry that don't get any credit at all. Right? We don't give enough credit to. I mentioned his name earlier. The guy who did the first portable hard drive, portable computer. Adam Osborne.
Osborne. Right. Adam Osborne.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was right. He was wrong because he didn't understand the cost of goods, right? And lost his company.
Right. But the Osborne effect, the famous Osborne effect.
Oh, that's Osborne.
Is that right?
Yeah. We've talked about that a couple times on the show.
Anyhow, but the point is that he was right? I mean, people wanted a computer that was portable, and when some of the guys in Taiwan and started focusing on laptops, we went from a generation that, remember, we moved people from the big PC model by our data pack, right? So all of a sudden you had all these little slim, nice looking things. But now everybody believes that they can have the same powerful computer sitting on their desk and carry it with them, right? Which is basically the concept we do with the data pack. So a laptop becomes the thing you carry with you. But more importantly, you don't need a high price machine other than that, right? Because you can get everything you need out, unless you want to set up some kind of lab or a service network. So then you buy the machines that go in your server, and then you buy a lot of machines that you can carry with you, right? And we're now in a situation where most new PCs are either going to be server kinds of machines, right, with lots of capability, or they're going to be laptops, right, of some kind.
Got it.
They won't be tablets, however, right? They'll have tablet capability, but everybody discovered that the tablet was a wonderful thing. And for people that wanted to show them off and do something with them, they're perfect. My partner watches movies on their iPad and takes it out and gives presentations to customers on it. It's perfect for that, right? Mm-hmm. But you can't do Excel on it very well. Right?
No, you can't do anything.
Typing
real work.
Right? So, whereas a good laptop will do anything, right? I mean, literally anything.
That's right.
And so we think. I mean, not we think. It's obvious that that's the future, right? And so we took a look at that, and we took our flash capability and decided we'd make USBs first, which we did just to be able to make sure we had them, could make a little money. But we took a look at the SSD market, and at that point, SSDs were selling for like about $500 a piece, right? For 256. And, the guys with the hard drives went crazy. They got the ability with the MR heads and the high automation at Seagate. They could build a terabyte drive and sell it for $70, right? And,
insane,
And they do, right? And Western Digital followed them, and they do. And if you want a couple terabytes, like for your videos and things like that, buy
there's
it.
No other choice.
Get them. Well, no. More importantly, you get it for nothing, right? You can put them on a machine, and they're perfect. But they're ugly and slow, and they're not the right thing for your nice little portable laptop, right? So what we did is we said, okay, if we can reduce the flash cost, which we know we can lower the price down to the point where we can convince people that they should only have a machine with SSD in it. Okay? And we immediately proved the same thing happened when you went from an SSD machine, from a hard drive machine to an SSD machine. People will not go back, right? I mean,
no, absolutely.
They just said it. When the president of the company who did 23 years at SanDisk, did all this stuff. The first time he'd actually run an SSD machine because he was buying one to find out what was going on. And 2 days later, he said, "That's it. I'm giving the other one away. You don't try to take this one back," right? And
love it.
That's going to happen. Now, Windows, let's talk about Windows for a minute because it's such a shame, right? We lost track of what we were doing with Microsoft. Microsoft lost track of what they were doing. What they would do is they do a new operating system. It would help Intel's hot new machine or the new video stuff that people have come out with and so forth, and take advantage of the terabyte drive. And so people were upgrading, right? If you look at it, from AT on, people bought a new machine almost every year. Certainly no less than 2 years, right? And so we built this enormous base. 1.6 billion people own some kind of personal computer, right? Okay. The last time they updated was Vista. Okay.
What?
Yes.
Right.
Vista?
Yep. Nobody upgraded after Vista, right?
Nobody upgraded to Vista because Vista was hopeless.
That's what I said, right? There was just
so
it was like I had an XP, the next machine is a Vista, no way, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, Windows 8 was worse, right?
That's right. Everyone jumped to Windows 7. Yeah.
Windows 7 was okay, but it wasn't perfect. And Windows 8 was such a disaster, they finally did 8.1. Well, Microsoft, apparently, maybe by firing their president and everything, has finally gotten the word. And they're making a version, Windows 10, that is friendly enough that I think people who own an XP machine or whatever kind of machine will be able to use the new machines very effectively. And they'll work just like their old machine. Okay.
Yep.
And the interesting thing is, it's going to be free.
That's right. The upgrade is, if you have 7 or 8.
Yeah. Even for people who've pirated it before, it's going to be free.
So now I've got Windows 10, right? And I've got a machine that has in it a 256 GB SSD. Now, I know you guys use stuff with your disks and everything else, and that's the reason you got a USB port and you hook up to all these great big storage devices that you don't carry around with you. But 256 GB is a big number, right? With all due respect.
Yeah.
And so you can get a 256 GB machine for probably under $500. Touchscreen, right?
Yeah.
And that's next year's future. Now, what we've done is we found a way to make the SSD much faster. And we found...
How much faster?
Just depending on if you run the test, just certainly faster. Literally compared, it's like the hard disk, right? You know, I mean, once you've started using it, it's faster. But you know,
it's a one-way path. You're not going back after that.
Well, no, and more importantly, it's faster and it's better, but it's not faster and better enough that you would move from one SSD to machine to another. Probably, although we may get there. But right now, remember, there's 1.6 billion people, most of whom do not have SSD machines. Okay. And we think that if we can talk one of the big guys like Lenovo or HP into announcing with Microsoft the new Windows and the new SSD machines with the high performance, that people who have a machine today will look at it and say, Christ, for that kind of money, I can get that something. And you only got to get them to use it once, just like I did the hard drive. Right? They'll buy, right? I mean, right now, how do I get the money out of my pocket, right?
Yeah. You take checks still, Chuck?
No, I'm serious. I mean, I've been in this industry where we got away with that crap, right? And they'll get away with it now because it's that better a machine. And so we have great hopes that we're going to sell the SSDs into that market and build a nice little company.
And you just got a patent on that last year?
Yeah, no, we got basically the thing that we've done is, you know, because this is a technology group, we file patents and all that stuff. We don't have an SSD that runs flash. We have an SSD that runs DRAM. Okay? Right. So it's so fast because it writes to a DRAM. Flash takes a long time to write and has issues. Flash wears. This doesn't wear out because it's going to DRAM. And then what we do is we write the flash as an archive. So you have the flash and you have the hard drive, but you're running basically a DRAM SSD.
How do you handle power loss if there's an instant power loss?
With all due respect, that's an easy thing. Somebody invented the supercap.
Yep.
And
that's enough? You've got enough energy in a supercap to run?
You got to remember how fast you can dump. If you got 32 flash devices, you can dump everything on a 4 GB drive to that in like 5 to 7 seconds. And you can easily make a...
That's still a lot for a supercap.
No, it's not. We're 25. No? Yeah, no. The new supercaps with the right power supply, 25 cents. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a system we put in, right? But we can protect it. Yeah. And there's some tricks we can do where we actually can recover. We built it so you can recover instantly from any downtime. We actually, every time you shut the machine down, we do a snapshot. So when you power the machine back on, it's exactly where it was. The files are exactly where they are. There's a bunch of stuff like that can be done easily. So the machine is a lot better. It feels a lot better. It operates a lot better. Mm-hmm. And
does this mean that you're now dependent on DRAM pricing though?
No. I remember I bought DRAM cheap, but no, it turns out.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it's just because you have the technology that can use the bad stuff.
I could, but I'm not even bothering because the DRAMs we're buying, because of the way we're doing this stuff, we can use the DRAM and just have holes in it rather than doing the other stuff. But we can do the other. We have patents on how you put DRAMs on boards. We're building all of this stuff directly from die onto boards. There's a bunch of stuff we're doing to lower the price, right? And the idea is to get the price point again. That's what we did with the hard drives, that we did with the Commodore. If you get the price point right and you get the performance right, they will be the path to your door, right? I mean, we sold a million C64s a month, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Right? I mean, nobody believed it at the time. But the point is, if you've got a product that people want, you can sell a lot, right? And do people like Atari, Nintendo, ultimately now I guess Microsoft with the Xbox, there's enormous businesses out there, right? And so that's where we're going. That's where we're hoping to go. And we think that if it works out, we will help bring the PC back to its right place and find, because our product works better than an Apple, which has been kicking the butt of the PC.
So at 78 years of age, you're still pioneering the computer industry.
I hope so.
I love it.
I hope so. Yeah. Listen, I'm healthy. You can't see a picture of me, but I run.
I saw a picture. You look healthy as hell, man.
I run at least an hour a day, and I get my heart rate up beyond maximum, and I've stayed in shape. And what we've proven. I went to a party with my partner, and this party's full of 60-year-old women who look 40. Right, and act 40. Right, and where age is a little different than it used to be. Right.
Yeah.
I think not even. I mean, age. Yeah, you're right. Age, whatever. I mean, just man, the fire in your belly, though, man. That's what I hear.
But people like Gene and all these other guys that I brought back. I brought some guys back, but I've also got the young guys. I mean, I got this factory in Sri Lanka that's desperate to go back to work, right? Because we built them a great thing, and we built a lot of special stuff. We have a lot of patents and stuff like that.
Sri Lanka, who's doing anything there? I mean, that's just that's just something we don't. That's just a country we don't hear about.
What, place like Sri Lanka? Well, probably because they had this big riot, rebellion going on and everything. But the Sri Lankan requires that every child graduate from high school. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. And if they don't go to high school or they don't go to school, the parents go to jail. Okay.
Wow. That's one way to.
No, but Singapore did it, right? The guy at Singapore is such an.
Right, yeah,
everybody is a high school graduate. So you go to Singapore now. Are they doing assembly and doing cheap shit? No, they built an entire infrastructure based around being smart. And
weren't they the ones who focused on like the innovation curriculum too, or something like that? Was that Singapore?
Well, I don't know.
They like
the Japanese.
I thought I was listening to something.
But it doesn't matter. The point is that if you got an educated populace, right, and like for instance, I have these are really small people, right? The ladies are pretty small and everything, but. We do, and we build our products highly automated in the sense that we don't use a lot of robots, but we have the computers are managing everything and keeping track. And everybody was saying, well, you got this thing where they have to have good manual dexterity. I said, look, every girl in that country learns how to sew from her grandmother from the time she's 6, right?
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, right. So they know how to sew, right? They've got dexterity because they had to learn it because their grandmother made them, right? Because for one generation before that, she had to sew all her clothes for her family and her husband, right?
Yeah, of course.
So what happens is you go into some of these countries and you get these great skills with great intelligence, right? And you can build factories that do marvelous things, right? I've qualified with multiple companies with that factory. And it's not expensive, right? So we'll build a lot of product in China because our customers are all in China. But it doesn't matter.
No. What's your view on China and where it's headed in terms of pricing there, labor pricing, and all that sort of everything?
So the labor goes higher in some places, right? But it doesn't go out of sight. I was in India when software guys quadrupled their salaries in a week, right? Because of what happened. Did that mean that they went out of the software business? Hell no. They're the richest people in the world because of software. When you're starting from a base of 20 cents an hour or 40 cents an hour, right? You can,
nowhere to go but up.
You can go a lot of places without destroying the economy. And it's a question of how you use the people and how you train them. But remember, that country hasn't even begun to touch its rural population, right? They're bringing it in, but, there's... go to Western China, right? And those people are still living out of grass huts and crapping outdoors, right? I mean, they no. China has enough resources to do what they want to do.
Do you see them sticking with them being the assemblers of the world, or do you see them becoming the technical innovation power?
Read about Lenovo. Lenovo was started by a guy who was head of a company called Legend, which the government gave him money to start, and he's a fundamental investor in Lenovo. His stated goal, and with government supporting him and him doing this with companies like Lenovo, he's saying that we are going to be innovators, not assemblers, and we're putting the money into schools. Right. Now, they've got a tremendous problem catching up, and because they killed all their intellectuals for almost 20 years, right? Remember, they did that, right? So you get a company like India where they've had the Indian schools are better, right? But they're spending the energy and they're bringing people from India go in. I mean, China will get there, right? I believe they'll get there, right? Mm-hmm. There's a couple of other places they might be going that the rest of you wouldn't want them to get to, but I think they're going to go there too. So they're not building a whitewater navy and the best military in the world for nothing.
No, that's right.
Oh, right. Right. The geopolitics stuff gets a little dicey pretty quick.
Well, so, I totally believe with the guys that predict that they're going to attack north through Siberia and take Siberia away from the Russians. And I work for the Russians.
Why would they want that?
It's got a funny little thing called oil. China is one of the world's biggest.
Oh, yeah, right. It always comes down to oil.
Well, it doesn't always come down to oil, but there's also all kinds of minerals and everything else. Yeah. And so they let the Russians keep the gas and they take the oil.
Yep.
And the Russians are 5 times those. I love Russians. I enjoyed working in Russia. Russia's got tons of smart people and no industry to support it. I mean,
I was going to say, is there tech up there at all?
Oh,
or what?
Very high tech, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, great.
I'm pretty sheltered here, Chuck. I don't know if you could tell.
No, but I'm serious. I was in Russia.
Talking to Aussies is the extreme of my internationalism most days. So.
Yeah, the problem is with the Aussies is they party so much. It's hard for them to be the high intellectual capable.
Yeah, that's it.
Just too damn beautiful outside. They just keep going hanging out at the beach.
Yep.
No, I don't know. Australia has decent schools and good research. They just don't have enough people, right? I mean,
no,
if you look at some place like Perth, they're starting to get somewhere, right? Sydney's problem is you can, as soon as it's like here in the States, if you're a pretty good, smart guy, you don't go into technology, you go into investment banking or real estate, things like that, right? Right. It's because the money's there, right? And they, I mean...
Yeah, how's that been seeing that? I mean, because obviously when you were starting, there was, there's just huge margins on tech and everything like that. How has that
I've never been able to hold big margins because I screw them up, right? We've always been...
you keep innovating.
We're always the price leader, right? We're always trying to build something cheaper than everybody else to build the volume, right? And so we were not in the high margin business. We were in the fun margin business where you sold a lot and made money by selling a lot, right? And I think both Juggy and I and some people like that, Jamil, all those guys were of that philosophy. Jamil used to say, I'm not building for the classes, I'm building for the masses, right? And, so I think the answer is that HP had high margin business and they're having to split the company up, right? I'm not sure that the world supports high margins except on innovation of some kind, right? I mean, you got Xerox with 19 years worth of patents, right? I mean, they had a lot of fun with that, right? But that's okay, right? The economies are good enough that if we keep people working and keep them focused, and that's part of our problem in this country is we took all the jobs and sent them to Asia. No, I'm serious, right?
Yeah, I know.
No, these guys, when they got laid off at the auto factories, they were saying, well, that's good. I can go to work. I want to go to work doing accounting or something because it's a lot easier. And they were right? But that job went second, right? And those jobs didn't come back. Luckily, Obama saved the automotive industry, but the accounting jobs and that stuff haven't come home, right? And we haven't given anybody the economic incentives to bring them back because everybody wants to talk about cutting this tax. What they need to be doing is giving people credits in some form or another for doing stuff onshore that they moved offshore. And I don't see that happening, but it needs to happen, right? I mean, because, Sri Lanka, 100% college graduate. Counting people high school. Tell me about how the average people who are really educated that graduate from our high schools now, about 50%.
Oh, right. Well, at 100% graduation from Sri Lanka, you can't say if that's the same, if that's actually 100 either. But
it's pretty close because they didn't get through, right? They stayed and worked hard and did everything else. No. By the way,
that kind of focus on education is huge. Yeah. I mean, I think
my only point is that we're ruining our future by not educating. We don't have an apprentice system in this country, but we desperately need it. Yeah. Ask yourself.
I totally agree.
Ask yourself if you've met a master machinist of any age, right?
Yeah. No.
Right? They died.
I don't know.
I know a lot of machinists, but
but they died, right? And because there isn't an apprentice system and a reward system for those guys. I mean, we don't. But the reason I mentioned that, it's a fundamental technology. Right.
No, definitely. And, there was an article I saw this week from a local, because I mean Cleveland's built on manufacturing and stuff like that, and just like, one of the biggest threats around here, at least, is if the stock market keeps going and doing okay, all these guys who are 60, 65, they start eyeballing that door, and it's like, hey, nobody's here. There's no one behind them.
No.
So. That's a problem.
Yeah. They also got arthritis in Cleveland because of bad weather. I'm not being smart, but it's true. I live in California where everybody is fit and running and having a good time.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
Happy.
That's the way.
Yeah. But I don't even want to talk about Sydney. Sydney is one of the garden spots of the world, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. That's why it's so bloody expensive.
Yeah, well, it should be, right? I want you guys to have.
Yeah,
to, I want you guys to have to earn all that good shit, right? I mean,
that's it.
No, but no. We. I guess I'm getting philosophical, but education is an important part of. Education is something that we have to spend time on and energy on, and we're not doing that, right? And motivation, and I'm not talking about every kid being a philosophy graduate. I'm talking about there's a whole bunch of kids that should be learning machinists, carpentry,
oh hell yeah,
things like that, and they're not, right? They're just not getting the. And by the way, okay, so maybe we'll be able to print all of the new. Prototypes and everything, but remember, you couldn't build a product.
I was so hoping you were going to say chips right there, Chuck. I know you weren't, but me and Dave have a long-standing thing.
What about
anyway, sorry,
printing?
Go ahead.
Oh no, the
printed chips. I was saying.
No, but that printed thing is. By the way, that's a beautiful technology, and I don't know if you know it or not, but that technology has the computer clubs that drove the PC business now.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. These guys are.
Yep, totally.
Yeah. Remember I mentioned.
You're talking 3D printing, right?
Yeah. Remember I mentioned Seiler? At work, he does 3D printing for an industrial design group. At home, he has 3D printers he's built, and he goes to all these clubs because it's the new hot technology, and they can do wonderful things with it, right?
Yep.
And robots, because of the microprocessors, because of the ability that we've done with being able to build materials and things like that. Mm-hmm. And the focus of some of the great stuff they did as a result of trying to make up to people for how badly we damaged them in North America. So we've built prosthetic arms, and we're doing things that are that are very major breakthroughs in robotics, right? And those are the futures, right? I mean, I became a computer guru, right? Which I like to think of myself as at least a little bit of one. Because in high school and college, my junior year, I learned about computers from a guy that had studied under Claude Shannon and worked with Claude Shannon.
Oh, right? Nice.
And the point is he built into me a belief that computers were something I wanted to do for a living for the rest of my life, and I have, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is we need robots as that now. Right. I mean, there are things like that, but you and I are talking about things we know about, right? 3D printing and so. But if I asked you 10 years ago, would you have said 3D printing?
No, 5 years ago, I barely
What
would
kind
have
of
said
printing?
Yeah, you understand
The
what
printer
I'm saying?
I know is the one
right?
that's expensive.
What I'm saying is all of these things are happening now, and we can grow our businesses and our economies and everything, but we're going to leave half the population behind because we screwed them up, right?
Right.
And
right.
and I hope we're going to fix that, right?
What is your view on like the computers, the educational computers these days, like the Raspberry Pi?
I haven't looked at any of that
like
stuff, but I got one little story which we'll tell, which is fun. When we first did the Commodore, right? And I went to Europe, and I was bringing it back.
The PET, you mean?
Yeah, the PET. Yep. And we just did the Commodore, and we announced to everybody, and we told people. So I give a lecture in New York or someplace saying that I think the computers are going to change education, which they did, of course, right?
Right.
I landed at the San Francisco airport, and there's a bunch of reporters there, right, to refute me saying that computers are going to change education. And they have a parallel presentation on the news with this little old lady school teacher says you can't change the way people interact with humans. Well, guess what we've learned, right? Okay. Most of the teachers don't interact properly, right? And the computers at least helped, right? And,
That's right.
I think computers I think if people find a way, look, people are really starting to project that we won't go to school, won't go to college in 10 years. You'll do everything online.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Everything. I don't know. Everything online, right? ASU will.
Dave, I'd like to introduce you to my program.
No. But think about it. ASU now will give you a series of pretty good degrees without ever going to school, right?
Yep.
And there's no reason why they can't do some of that, right? And
there'll be a market for it, definitely. I don't think it'll be the future, though. I don't think it'll be the only future.
I've got grandkids in college now, and I've had kids in college and everything, and they're not satisfied with what they're getting out of the schools, because the schools, I talked to them, we have a tenured professor, is a brother-in-law, pseudo-brother-in-law, and he's saying that we don't get to teach anymore. We just teach to get them through school because they don't give a damn.
That's right.
Yeah. So
the world is so complicated these days, though. You can't learn everything at school. It's not possible. And you can't learn everything in one online degree either. I mean,
no, but let me just tell you something. There's a thing called internship and apprenticeship, which should be the future, right?
Totally.
So you should be able to get some online education and go to some school or some company where you apply some of that stuff and get paid poor wages, but do something useful.
Yep.
And then go on, right?
Just like in Germany.
That's going to happen.
Siemens does that.
But it's going to happen. That's what I got. When I came out of college, I didn't know anything. When I left my college, there wasn't one computer on campus in 1959. Right. Not one. Right? So when am I going to learn about computers on campus, right? I learned from this one guy, right? So my point is that what's happened is okay. So now we got computers on campus, great. But what I'm saying is that the future isn't about hand-holding at the college level, right? It's not that.
No, totally.
And maybe what you do is you have a whole bunch of people who become computer therapists for guys who are studying online. I like that. Meet with them and hold their hand and tell them they're doing okay. I don't know, right? I mean,
that's like a recitation session with an online program. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The future is like, it's no different whether you go to college to learn something or whether you do an online degree. You're always going to come out knowing not a huge amount. You have to apply it practically and
If GE hadn't had a training program, the reason I went to work for GE is they had a training program. Yeah. They trained me. I worked for my first year troubleshooting nose cone failures. Right.
Nice.
And I got involved with the beginning of the electronics industry in the United States because I had to go out to these companies that didn't know what the hell they were doing and help them try to figure out how to build stuff so we could. And what I'm saying to you is that all of that training was invaluable to me, right?
Absolutely.
I went to school. They let me go design a small computer thing while I was going through the training program, and that then led to a job there. But what I'm saying is that when I came out of school, I looked at what I said. I don't know anything, right?
Yep.
I'm going out into industry, and they're going to expect me to know something,
yep.
right? Well, luckily, GE didn't, right? And I don't know if they've changed that philosophy now or not. I don't know, right? I mean, I would hope not.
In the engineering industry, it's considered it's a basic fact that when you come out of college, you know nothing. You have a basic foundation, but you essentially are completely clueless about how to do any practical work. And that's going to be the same regardless whether it's a real college or whether or not it's an online course.
Oh, yeah, no question. So companies have to have their own training programs.
Absolutely.
And people, we should be giving them tax credits for that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we should.
I totally agree.
Yeah. I mean, we should do things. Anyhow, I'm sorry, we got off into.
No, I'd actually love to tell a story because it pissed me off so bad. So I was at the ECE Department Heads Association conference on Monday and Tuesday this week. And there was a panel, and they were talking about the subject. Why can't we hire talented graduates and stuff like that? And there are all these, and it was all these industry people up on stage. It was like a panel of industry, like high level execs.
Yeah.
And so one of the guys, and I won't say where he's from because I don't want him to get mobbed, but he gets up, and they're all doing like slides and stuff like that. And he says, "I know we keep talking about all this practical stuff, but I just want to keep saying, please only teach theory." And I'm like looking around, and I'm like in the back of the room. I'm looking around, and all these like ECE department heads are like nodding their heads, and I'm just like, what am I doing right now? Where am I? Like, is this a Twilight Zone? I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And so at the end, I'm just sitting back there seething, just like with anger. Obviously, I teach a practical electronics program.
Right.
And so I get up during the Q&A, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Why? What did you mean by that? How, are you guys willing to train people? That's what I asked them. Because I know that none of them are because of the costs, and people leave companies early and stuff like that. And he's like, well, no, I didn't, he kind of backtracks. No, I didn't actually mean that. He said, what I really meant was when I interview people, they aren't able to answer my questions about theory. And I was just going, but that's because you don't ever teach them anything practical to go along with it. And I was just like going nuts. Chris, calm down. Sorry about shouting, but I was going nuts. And it was just like, I was like looking around, I gotta get out of here, because it was just like that's unfortunately what the state of it is right now. And Chuck, I'm totally on board with you, man. We need apprenticeship, we need practical tie-ins and stuff like that, and it's just like, it was terrible.
And internships work, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they
that's
really do
how
work. If companies support them, they work. So I think your online system has some internships built into it, and that gives you some reality checks and puts you back on track.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my internship was stacking lumber in a lumber yard.
Right. Yeah.
I was poor, and that was the best paying job. Right. But I wouldn't have learned anything anyhow. I was coming out of school when the transistor was invented. How would I have learned anything?
Right. Exactly. Where do you get that stuff for the bleeding edge things? You have to get. You have to work together.
Yeah, particularly now. Some of this stuff is starting to happen, but we're still going to. I hope we're going to keep seeing breakthroughs. It makes my life more exciting, right? I mean, and your life more exciting.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we got off track. I think I covered everybody. Tell me I got everybody. I got to give credit to something that you guys should give credit to.
Yeah.
The Computer History Museum
is awesome. Yeah.
Has started a program over the last 2 or 3 years where they've taken everybody who did anything and brought them down, put them on videotape, and recorded them because they were afraid they're going to die.
Yeah.
It was started as a result of Jobs, right? I mean, they realized that they missed this enormous opportunity to ask him to tell us about life, right? Yep. And so they've done that, and they're still doing it.
Yep.
And I don't think they're getting enough credit, and I don't think people know that that's a resource that they should be tapping.
No, I think we mentioned that the other week on the show.
That was a Stanford program going on since.
Stanford have a similar program.
Which is early.
Yeah, but these guys have. I mean, I have an interview. I didn't go on tape at Stanford, but me and all my buddies and everybody else, and I just gave them the reference to the guy that may have done CMOS or Rockwell, and the guys who really did something.
Yep, exactly.
Right? And by the way, they weren't all right for damn sure, right? A whole bunch of people did bad things, but the fact that we've got them trapped on tape and recorded
it's great.
is enormous. Well, no, because it's a learning experience for what's going to happen next, right?
Yep.
So I'm totally backing that program. I want you to tell everybody about it. People should be using it for any research they do in the industry, because you get 4 different views of the same subject. Yeah. None of them which match popular science, right? I mean, they because a lot of those stories are wrong, but they weren't wrong when but what these people have told is what they remember about the truth, and that's all that matters, right? Because you get a guy like Gordon Moore, right? I mean, think about how important that is, right?
Yep. Exactly. Totally.
I think I'm sure they missed. Noise, right? They didn't get him in time.
Right. Yeah.
But it'd been wonderful to talk to him.
Well, I mean, on our show, we've talked about it too, because like we weren't big enough, but like Jim Williams and Bob Peace and then Hans Commons and like all these guys passed away kind of in a short period, and they were like we didn't.
They were on our list, like they were on our list to be interviewed, you know, and and they passed away.
Yep.
You know.
So that's an invaluable service. Do you know is there a specific name of that program, or is it just the video history?
I think it's video history, and I may have the person's name. If you don't, I'll send you an email from her.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That runs it, because I just don't think it's being promoted enough, and it's such a great idea. And they really worked hard. They've gotten a whole bunch of people that you might not even thought they might get.
Yeah.
And it turns out that most everybody who's been in the industry suddenly realizes, I haven't had a chance to tell anybody my story, and it's going to die with me, right?
Yeah, I think it's called the Oral History Collection. That's what I found online.
Yeah, I think so, something like that.
Yeah, it's both audio.
Whatever it is, it's a great idea.
That is very good.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, guys, I've dragged this thing on out. I assume you're going to edit it down to nothing.
You got like 6 more hours. We can keep going, man. But I guess we should probably let you get home and eat dinner as well. So.
No.
I've got a few more questions, Chris.
Go ahead.
Actually, one comes from Bill Hurd, who you obviously know, and he wanted to know. He wanted, I think, us to ask you about patents on the 6502. Were there any? What was
probably at the beginning there were, and Mensch may have done. See, the 6502 went through 2 evolutions. Remember, there was a 6502 which we did, which was designed to do what I said. It was supposed to be the basic building block, and then when we went out and after Commodore threw out Mensch from his company, he needed a job, needed to get something done, and Rockwell, who had taken a second source in the 6502, said, "We're making this investment in CMOS," which is the thing I'm sending the guy up to the History Museum, who says he's the guy that did the CMOS for Xerox, for Rockwell, they said, "We'll fund you," right? And so Bill went in and put fixes into the 6502 that he thought ought to be in there, right? And then he did this 816 with a lot of help from Apple, right? Mm-hmm. So, he extended that product pretty well, right? So, and I think he patented some of the stuff that he did, right? But they would be long since run out.
Oh yeah, of course.
Clone away, folks.
Jeez,
just go ahead for it. Go for it.
Yeah. No. And what was your take back when the Altair came out? What did you think of that? Were you surprised by its success?
Altair.
Yeah, the Altair, like as in the front cover, the touted as the world's first personal computer, kit.
Oh! No, I think that was remember that was the first for the group that the cover it was on. Those were the hobbyists, right? They were the
hobbyists, exactly.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. They were the guys that were building their own TV sets and everything else. So it was absolutely the first, right? And
but that was the same year that the 6502 came out, 75.
Yeah, but they were doing something different. They were making a computer, right?
Right.
And we were doing the 6502 was not designed to be a computer product. It just happened to be because we're running interpretive basic. We were able to use it for that. It was designed to do what it did. It's a great control device. My new chip has 11 6502s in it.
Nice.
Your what device?
My new chip. My new SSD
He's his
chip.
latest patented
really?
flash drive thingy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, no, the reason it has 11 is because the 6502 was, remember we talked about task processing and distributed processing? The 6502 was designed to do something. Just one thing, right? Do it well, do it cheap.
Yeah.
And if you want it to do something else, get another one and let that one do something else, right? I mean, and everybody has gotten carried away with 7 processors and everything else. And if you look at the operating systems that support those, they're enormous and they've slowed them down and everything else. Distributed processing, that's what 6502 was for, was distributed processing. It turned out that because of BASIC, we made it into a nice little computer. Right, but I guarantee you, when we did the MS-DOS machine, we put 6502s in the controllers, but we didn't put one in the main computer. We were going to go for a machine that was more serious, right?
Yeah,
right.
With all due respect to the word serious.
Serious, yeah.
No, but I'm saying that the 6502 wasn't a competitor to Altair. It wasn't anything.
Right.
6502 was supposed to be enabling the low-cost applications of computers, and it did.
Got it.
Yeah.
Right.
And were Apple using, because Apple were a competitor of Commodore, obviously, were using the second-sourced?
Yeah, from Centertech.
Yeah. right, okay.
And Rockwell, but it didn't matter. Their volume was never that heavy.
So
frankly.
were Commodore getting a sort of royalty on those second source chips? No?
But we wanted the product to be second source, so we took a fee from Rockwell and we didn't take anything from Centertech.
Okay, so you got a fixed fee and then...
No, Centertech was give us a second source to give us credibility and because we both did Atari, right? I mean, we made serious money off Atari, right?
Oh, yeah. So do you think too much credit these days goes to Jobs and Woz because they're the most memorable?
No, I think they had a guy by the name of Regis McKenna, who's a great PR guy, and they've had a continuous PR campaign from then till now, right? And Woz gets to tell stories that aren't true anymore, right? And no, I'm saying
like. What are your favorite non-true Woz stories?
Like the thing about going into his place with a hat
suit on, right?
And asking him for help doing the PET, right? And he was right about what should have been done in the PET, because he was totally wrong. He missed the BASIC altogether, right?
Right.
That's a famous argument, right?
And then you going in there and fixing the Apple I.
Yeah, but we also, the guys that came in from outside had to fix the Apple II, because Woz wasn't an engineer at the time, and he made 2 or 3 basic mistakes on the Apple. But it didn't matter, right? It wasn't that. It was remember, people didn't care that the 6502 was at the heart of the Apple. That's right. They cared about the basic, right? And the screen editor we put in, and ultimately a bunch of people bought the Apple because of some of the stuff he could do with graphics, and ultimately the reason it saved Apple was VisiCalc, right? VisiCalc saved Apple.
It made
program?
the Apple, right?
Spreadsheet made the Apple. Save it.
Yeah,
by the way,
totally.
I'm going to give credit one more time. I keep forgetting some of the people to give credit to. The guys that did VisiCalc did the first personal computer program that wasn't like anything else before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
right. There was nothing like it before. Yes, Microsoft's done Excel and everything else, and all of us use it, right? And by the way,
VisiCalc was Dan Bricklin, wasn't it?
No. It was. I'm going to kick myself if I forget their names. Look them up, because they're both. It was there was 2 guys. And I know both their names. I just can't remember right now. But it was 2 guys from Harvard. The Harvard story all over again. There were 2 guys from Harvard that came up with the idea while they were going to school, right? Bricklin is the guy that was promoting it, right?
Oh, right. I thought, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Frankston?
Yeah, Frankston's one of them. No.
Bob Frankston.
Yeah. And then there's the other one, right? Anyhow, those two guys absolutely invented it. The Lotus guys came in and made it somewhat better. Excel came in and made it better.
Well, Lotus owned the PC market for it. They took the gamble to write it in assembly language for only the PC, and that's what made Lotus 123 so famous. Yeah.
But my point is that Excel is a great product.
Changed everything.
Yeah. And by the way, when we went to Bremerton the first time, Gates had moved there not to do operating systems, right? He had the basic, but he was just selling that. He went there to set up Word, things like that. He saw that as the future, and he was right. Okay.
Yeah, that's why he brought in Charles Simonyi. He worked on the early Office products.
There's a funny story about the guy from Xerox, right? And it's somewhat public knowledge, so I can tell you.
It will be after this.
Exactly.
I've told this story before. Gates knew, for lots of reasons, that he needed a good word processor. Gates has the same problem with words that I do, right? I mean, you need a word processor to be able to communicate. And so he wanted the guy from Xerox because Word was a superior product, right? It was built into their stock.
The Xerox Star.
Right. And he couldn't get the guy to join him. So he went to this guy, Dave Marquardt, who's one of the original investors in Seagate, would have been an investor in Sirius, and he went to and Gates told Marquardt, "I will let you invest if you get this guy for me." And Marquardt went out and got him. And Marquardt's the only venture capital investor, and he's still on the board.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
And he changed Microsoft forever, right? I mean, the work he did on Word changed and made them a true application software company, right?
Yep.
And then I'm not sure if he carried over into Excel or what, but Excel turns out to be a great product. Ultimately, Windows Explorer became a great product, right? I mean, Presentation Manager, all these things became good products after they decided to go do them, right? And so, in terms of their application suite, they've got a really strong application suite, right? And that's where they make all their money, right?
Yeah, of course. That's why they're now looking to not charge for their OS anymore.
Right. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. No. Seriously, the applications are really important. They changed the industry every time they did them right. They got them right. And would you give a presentation today without Presentation Manager?
I try not to give presentations, so
well,
that helps.
It's like death by PowerPoint, but still, you've got to have something like that.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. It's a nice tool if you want to make. I make a lot of presentations because we're trying to get the company funded and everything, right? And it's just a great tool, right? I use Excel to do my budgeting and keep my books, right?
Yeah. And it's so part of the business paradigm these days too. It's just assumed.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is so he got it right. Okay, he did get it right, even though he screwed up the operating system. Not he, but they screwed up the operating system. I mean, Windows. I had a big fight because I had seen. Okay, I'm sorry. This one story I didn't tell you yet, but I'll tell you now.
This is great.
I was at Apple for a short time, and because they kind of lied to me, and I made some mistakes leaving Commodore anyhow. But anyhow, neither did I.
Did Jobs hire you, or what was it?
Yeah, it's actually the president hired me, but Jobs. Oh, right. Okay. And Steve and I were working together on what became the Lisa. Okay.
Oh wow.
And
Steve Jobs or was?
Steve Jobs didn't do any architecture work.
Oh, right? That's right. He didn't work on the Lisa. Yeah.
He didn't work on any architectural stuff, right? He never. I'm not trying to be smart. He just didn't.
No,
right?
It
wasn't his skill set. But Steve was an innovator, right? And he was absolutely dedicated to make the Lisa successful. And he went up at Jeff Raskin, who deserves a lot more credit than he got, because he wrote the book that made Apple popular, the user manual.
Yes,
everybody loved the Apple user manual, and Jeff wrote that, right? But he took Steve up to meet Park, right? And he showed them the operating system. That was effectively a shorter version of Stars, right? It became more became better, but and Steve came back, and he and I had lunch at Good Earth, and he said, "Those guys are not going to make this happen, and I'm convinced, and I want to build my next machine around it." And he did, right? And,
of course.
But he knew he was stealing it from Xerox, right? No question, right?
Oh, well, but that's what you did. I mean, it's just an idea. A good idea is a good idea.
Xerox didn't complain, right, at all, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. But, the funny story is that when Gates finally, after pressure for months and years from me, put Windows into the machine and brought it out, Apple either sued him or threatened to sue him, right? And somebody had to bring it to their attention that if they won anything, the guys who were going to get the reward was Xerox, not Apple, right?
Right.
because Jobs had stolen the thing from Apple and blatantly stole it, right? I mean, but would give Steve credit. The fact that and by the way, Raskin is the one. Steve put it into the Lisa. Raskin forced it into the Macintosh. And then Steve, when the Lisa failed, took the Macintosh away from Raskin and took all credit.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But in fact, the point is that changed the industry in a way it should have been changed, right? It was a superior system. And Gates and I had this fight and internally because IBM didn't want to do Windows. IBM wanted to do something else. Okay. And they were pushing Gates. I mean,
they were doing what was the IBM OS back then?
I don't know, whatever it was. But the point was that they were pressing Gates to do that, and the rest of us were screaming at him to do Windows, and he finally did Windows, and of course that made his company totally explode because it was the right solution, right?
Yeah,
it was absolutely the right solution, and they did a pretty good job with Windows for a while, and then they screwed it up. They got confused about what Windows is and why you use it and how you use it, and they quit listening to users fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
They decided that tablets were doing well, so we're going to make it all a tablet machine. Well, ask the 1.6 billion people in the world if they want a machine that acts like a tablet, right? Bullshit, right?
I think we got 3 votes here for no, so we should keep moving.
But I'm just saying, I actually had given him that advice. I was talking to him about trying to focus on doing this next generation product, and I wrote that advice to him, but they didn't pay attention to me nor to anybody else, right? But the point is that was stolen from Xerox. Jobs made it happen, and Microsoft just took forever to make their version happen. And now you wouldn't even think about not having it, right? I mean, it would be totally against you. I don't know if you ever wrote any MS-DOS instructions, but they had the most ugly shit in the world.
I did that back in the day, yep.
It was funny. I'm selling the product, right? Yeah. And I had lots of programmers and everything else. I said, I'm not going to. I had done this really nice screen editor for the pad, and I said that it's just so ugly. I'm not going to have anything to do with it. I'll wait till Windows comes out, right? And then I kept pushing Gates for Windows, right? Because I didn't want anything. It's so ugly, right? I mean, it worked, and we built a whole industry around it. But that's because we had a lot of dedicated programmers that were willing to do that crap, right? I mean, anyhow, I'm sorry.
Deal with what's given to them.
So do you know any of the history between Apple and Jobs and Gates in terms of Windows?
No. Gates didn't, Jobs didn't have much to do. In fact, I think when Windows came out...
No, I mean, he was livid that Gates had done this window, had gone behind his back and did Windows.
I don't see
why
he
Gates
would be.
was saying that it's not going to be a desktop OS or something, and...
I don't think that. Honestly, I'm not sure that it really happened because wasn't Jobs gone during that time? I think Jobs wasn't even at Apple during that time.
I think it was just before he left.
Maybe, but he was. It could be. It could be that Jobs before he left he had gotten totally full of himself, right?
Right.
I think the reason he came back and did such a good job is he got his teeth kicked in at his own company, right? And
right. Yep.
And I think that helped him a lot, right? But when he came, by the way, one last comment about Flash. Jobs didn't come back saying, I'm going to make the world better. He came back and said, Flash is going to change the world. I'm going to be the leader. And he did, right? iPod. I mean, is it iPod? Yeah, iPod.
Yeah.
Yep. The phone, couldn't have done the original phone without Flash, right?
Yeah.
You definitely couldn't do the iPad. And they basically built the laptops around it, right? I mean, and he was the leader in each one of those phases, right? I mean, people were doing other stuff, right? You told me that you said the iPod actually had a hard drive at its beginning. I didn't realize that. Or
The thick one.
Yeah, originally that was the breakthrough.
I mean, but my point was that Steve recognized that was a technology that he was going to ride, and he wrote it well, right? Yeah. Right. And he built the things around it that people wanted to buy. And he does such a great job, or did such a great job on aesthetics, right?
Absolutely. That was Jonathan Ive, wasn't it?
Yeah, but let me tell you something else. You know, I was kind of against doing Apple ever since I beat them so many times, and I just went. So I'm about to buy a smartphone, right? When smartphones first come out, and so I bought my grandson and then my girlfriend iPhones, right? And I bought the Samsung equivalent, supposedly Samsung equivalent, and I used it for about a week, and then I just gave it to my grandson. The screen work that Jobs forced them to do before they bought the iPod,
the Gorilla Glass and all the scratch stuff, right?
Well, but the point is the screen really worked with your fingers, and it did all the things you wanted it to do, and the others didn't, right? He had patents all over that stuff, and that was his contribution. Don't bring me shit. Right, that was basically his view. If it doesn't work good, go fix it until you show it to me, right? Because he would just he would take them apart if they did, right? And I don't know if that's a management style that everybody should go, but he turned out some really nice products, right?
The chimes are told.
That's right.
That's my phone. And
I'm wondering now, is that on an iPhone or what?
It's on an iPhone. No, I wouldn't even think of. No, seriously, they have patents on the screen. Their screen's still better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Some of the other people have done better, but nah. Yeah. No. We have like 10 iPhones in my group, right? And that's good, right?
Yeah.
They all work.
I've never owned an Apple product.
Is that right?
Yep, never.
That's good. My girlfriend is a landscape designer, and I used to give her free computers, and she insists that she's got only Apple products. She's got the latest Apple Mac. She's got the iPad, and she and her friends would not be anything other than Apple customers.
Oh yeah.
See, I don't like the closed system. I don't.
I think the problem is
just rubs me the wrong way.
Your problem is you know too much. These people are
exactly.
These people are people that are impressed by the look.
Cheap.
They're impressed with what they can do with it. I mean, they brag about how good their photographs are, how good they're absolutely. The definition of trapping a customer base. They have a trapped customer base.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they won't go anywhere, right? I mean,
that's right.
And, I want to make the new PC superior to anything Apple's doing, so we stopped the migration. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm sorry. I'm glad I remembered the story about the Windows. Because
it's all good. Thank you very much.
No, listen, Chuck, it was fun, guys.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Awesome.
I hope. What happens to this now?
It goes live tomorrow.
It goes live as a podcast.
Our podcast, people can download it as an MP3 onto their iPod, their iPhone, their whatever, or
any other thing,
Samsung,
any smartphone,
any other thing. Yep.
Do you make any money off your audience, or is this?
No, this is we haven't figured out how to make money off this show. We've been doing it for 5 years, and yep,
labor of love.
No. You guys are you're a lot of fun to talk to, so I'm happy to do it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're very gentle to talk to. So,
gentle? People don't use that word in my presence
Dave.
generally. Yeah.
Dave's,
I'm not the gentle one. Chris is the gentle one,
have either one of you think? I mean, Dave, there's something you want to beat me up on? Go ahead and do it.
Dave, go ahead.
Right? No, nothing at all. You're a legend. I'm not going to beat you up for anything.
No. Listen, the way I learn is like having this guy Glenn. Right? We get into an absolute war, right? Because he's got an idea from today, and I've got this other idea, and we come up with something beautiful when we're done. Right? Yeah. I mean, that's the way you get things done.
Oh, I totally
you have to. All good ideas are polished by conflict.
Exactly, and that's what I make my living from. I do a video blog where all I do is speak the truth, and people love it.
Well, your version of the truth. Come on, Dave.
Well, what my version of the truth? Well, I'm not afraid to say what I think.
That's right. Yes.
So that's.
Listen, that's good.
Reason for my success.
I just watched Citizen 4 last night. Right.
I haven't seen that yet.
Don't watch it. It's really. Snowden deserves a fucking medal at Oslo.
Totally.
Not people here trying to convict him of something.
I know. Yep.
And the reporter that did that stuff, it's a great story. They won the Academy Award, and they should have. It was, it's really well done, right? And I strongly recommend it. But anyhow, my point is that here was a guy who said, I have to tell people the truth, not what, and he did, right? And they went out and did it. And back to, it's changed our way we live because he told the truth. And
absolutely.
And, I thought it was funny about Merkel, and I swear there's a story I heard that they went out and arrested the listening group, and the Germans went in and took over their listening group and arrested them right after they found out about that, and then of course let them go. Yep. I think it happened,
hilarious.
Right? They,
I'm sure it did, yeah.
Yeah, and I would have if I'd been a German head, right?
Right.
These are sovereign countries, right? I mean,
totally. I know.
Yeah, and but my point is that he was not out there to be liked, right? He was not out there to be anything other than to tell the truth, and he was really proud. I'm glad he did it. And I'm saying the same to you. Just keep telling the truth.
That's what I do.
The world is a better place for it, right? And,
I hope so. That's my intent.
No, seriously, I totally believe in it, right? I may not always agree with you, but that's too bad for me.
No, I don't expect people to agree with me when I speak my mind. I just expect them to,
Are we off being broadcast?
Not yet.
No, we're still going.
We can we can definitely say goodbye for now, and then we'll get the juicy stuff off the air. So that's the
no. Why don't you say goodbye? And I got one little story I want to tell you about China.
Yes, we get the good stories, folks.
Sorry, folks. So thank you. So officially, thank you very
Chuck,
much.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Bill for introducing us as well. That was very nice of him, and we really appreciate you coming on the show. It's awesome.
No, it was good.
Thanks, mate.
Okay.
See ya.
Come back on. Don't hang up.
We won't.
Okay. All right, we're good now. We're good now.
Yep.
Okay.